If we can call the meeting to order. This is the Open Space Advisory Committee meeting, February 26, 2018. It's 5:30 on that clock. It's 5:32 on my cell phone, so we're close to time. First thing is a roll call, determination of a quorum.
Chairperson Scott.
Here.
Vice Chair Welch.
Present.
Member Evans.
Here.
Member Inverson.
Here.
Member Hall.
Here.
Member Filson. Member Masad.
Here.
Member Michael.
Here.
A quorum's present.
Thank you. Thank you. Next, we'll call for public comment on any items which are not on the agenda. If anybody would like to say anything, and it's a pleasure to see people, thank you for coming. Through the evening, if you would, please, when you come forward to make a comment, sign up in a legible fashion so that we can accurately portray you in the minutes. In terms of your name, there's a sign-up sheet on the table there in front, and just if you would, please sign in when you come forward to make a comment. Are there any comments now about items not on the agenda? All right. Moving on to modifications to the agenda. I've had one request to make an agenda modification, and what I'm proposing to do is discuss the Board of Supervisors work program, which is item 3G, right after item 3A. So we will have Micah Woodruff's Eagle Scout presentation followed by the work program, which will give us the foundation for discussion and action potentially on the subsequent agenda items.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. Can
Yes.
you do approval of the minutes before modification to the agenda?
I changed the order and I'm taking the minutes next.
Okay.
No, I'm happy to.
Thank you.
We have the minutes from our last meeting, which was December 18th. Do we have any comments, changes, additions, updates to the minutes? Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Do we have
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, the minutes of December 18th for approval. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. We really need a lot of help up here at the chairman position to make sure we stay on the agenda. So now, are there any other modifications to the agenda besides what I mentioned earlier? Ann?
No modifications, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we will go to item 3A, discussion only regarding Micah Woodruff's Eagle Scout project for the Prison Hill Recreation Area. Ann, are you going to introduce that one?
Thank you, I will. Where's Micah? I just lost Micah. Come on up, Micah. Yes, and I apologize for the half-minute delay as we pull up his presentation here for the committee. Micah, go ahead.
Micah, can you sign in while you're there?
Yes.
Great. And welcome. We're glad to have you with us, and we are interested. You've got an exciting project, it looks like.
Address and phone number as well?
No, just the name is fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Micah Woodruff. I am a Life Scout with Boy Scout Troop 341, and this is my Eagle Scout Service Project presentation with the Carson City Open Space. I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to present to you tonight. Slide. My project will be an addition to the Prison Hill Recreation Area 5th Street Trailhead project, and my project will mainly consist of trail construction. Next slide. Was that the next? I think you missed one. Okay, well, for those who don't know, the 5th Street Trailhead project, Open Space has plans to improve the 5th Street Trailhead and associated trails. This is a recreational grant, trails program grant with the goals to improve the parking area and site amenities, as well as transform unsustainable off-road vehicle trails into walkable pathways. Here we have a map of the north end of Prison Hill. Outlined in blue will be the 5th Street Trailhead project, and outlined in red will be my additions to it and my Eagle project. My Eagle project will consist of the construction of a 297-foot trail to a viewpoint overlooking Carson City to the west, improving an already existing 256-foot shortcut trail, as well as installing 2 benches, one on the west side, west viewpoint, as well as one on an east viewpoint. The first location will be the trail to west viewpoint. The purpose of this trail will be to connect the main system of trails to this new west viewpoint where we will be installing a bench. Here we have a view overlooking where that viewpoint will be, and it has a nice view over Carson City and the mountains behind. The second location will be the shortcut trail. This trail is an already existing trail. We will be improving it to make it more safe and sustainable. This trail leads to the east viewpoint, which we have 2 views, one facing east and one facing west, the west overlooking Carson City and the east looking over the Carson River. A little bit more about the project. My goal will be for a positive user experience. Through the use of modern trail construction techniques, we'll make sure these trails are very sustainable through techniques such as outslope tread, grade reversals, sustainable grade, and observing the half rule. We will make sure these trails are here for years to come. Time and labor-wise, we are looking at just one Saturday in the late summer or early fall of 2018. We will be needing an estimated 20 scouts and 4 adult leaders for the completion of this project. This group will be split into 2 crews for the 2 different locations. Mr. Bergeron, who is the trails coordinator with Carson City Open Space, and volunteers from Muscle Power will provide the technical expertise for completing this project. Cost-wise, materials, tools, and benches will be provided by Carson City Open Space through the Recreational Trails Program grant. Other expenditures will include 2 brass plaques, which will be attached to the benches, as well as give troop recognition and other supplies such as drinking water, food throughout the day for the workers, and first aid supplies will all be sought through donations. Here we have a list of the materials and tools which we will be needing. Such tools as trail building tools, as well as bench placement, shovels, lopping shears, wheelbarrows, postal diggers, etc. All will be available will be available for our use through Carson City Open Space. Lastly, safety will be a very high priority for this project. We will be having a safety briefing before the start of the project, as well as appointing a safety officer to each crew to ensure safe practices are being followed, as well as having plenty of supplies for safety. So in conclusion, I'd like to thank you for listening and for your time. And if there are any questions, I would love to answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Micah. Any comments or questions from members of the committee? Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Chair.
Great job, Micah. I thought that was really informative. Cool project. I don't know what the half rule is. Could you tell me what that is?
It is basically where we measure the slope of the hill in which the trail will be placed, and not exceeding. We will have the trail go not exceeding half the degree of the hill that it will be built on.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm glad you asked that question. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Any public comments or questions? Micah, this looks great. 21 merit badges plus an Eagle Scout project to get your
Yes.
Eagle?
Yes, sir.
Good. You're ahead of the game.
Thank you.
This is great. We're comfortable with the details, Ann and Greg, for how this plugs in. It fits.
We are, and Greg has been working with Micah very closely on the field signs and exploring these trails and why they're needed and the construction. So I think this will be a great addition to the trail system on Prison Hill.
Great. Thank you. Okay, Micah, thank you. Good luck, and be sure you take some pictures. We'll be interested in seeing the results.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take up item 3G now, which is the Board of Supervisors' recommendation for a work program outline for the fiscal year 2018-2019, which is the year beginning July 1st this year. Ann?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the work program is to share with the committee a little ahead of time, but at the same time with our budget, in case there are different budget accounts that we need to add more funding to. Later on, as we are talking about the budget, you'll see that I suggested adding a few more funds to, I think, the consultants, land management, and land acquisition. But this is your time also to provide input if we're not staying on track, staying on direction, as well as potentially adding things. And unfortunately, I've penciled something in already, but please provide direction. It is a 6-page work plan. I don't want to necessarily cover every item, so I will just go page by page and maybe just highlight the items that we are really actively working on right now, just to, again, kind of a status report for you as well. So on page 1, under the capital improvement projects, 4 active projects there is East Silver Saddle Ranch and Sierra Vista Lane, and that is the next item on our agenda for discussion. The Prison Hill Recreation Area 5th Street Trailhead. We have received funding from the Recreational Trails Program for that trailhead that will be under construction this year, and that is complementary to Micah's project that you just heard about. The John D. Winter Centennial Park Trails, working with Muscle Powered and the Carson Senators mountain bike team, there will be a new sustainable single track trail constructed in that area, adding a new loop. That will be constructed also sometime this year. And the 4th item on this page is the Silver Saddle Ranch Prison Hill Recreation Trails. Again, the $1.8 million grant that we were awarded. We are starting that project this year, but it is 3 trail segments, and it will take us a few years to have that completed. Feel free to interrupt anytime if there's questions. Otherwise, I'll just continue. On page 2, under land acquisitions, we have the Clear Creek Nevada State Lands property. That's also on your agenda item tonight for discussion for fee title acquisition. And still working with Michael Fagan on the purchase of his 20 acres right near Highway 50. And then I did just pencil in on my notes tonight. It depends on your action later on how we move forward on purchase of the Ham property or some other means in that area. So that was the penciled item. Under management activities, Ash Canyon Road, I penciled in. As the committee knows, the road itself has been closed since last year's floods. We do still have some repairs to do, as well as our annual maintenance, but we are hoping to have that road reopened probably in April and hopefully by May. On page 3, fuels reduction projects, we actively stay engaged and continue to bring the sheep in every spring. Kings Canyon Road, we continue to work with the Forest Service on repair to that road. The Forest Service was awarded a grant through the Nevada Off-Highway Vehicle Commission. We applied for the grant, but the Forest Service will actually be the recipient of that. And then we will be submitting a complimentary application to the Recreational Trails Program for the actual maintenance part of the road. Signage, our signage master plan is complete. Both committees, the Open Space Advisory Committee and the Parks and Recreation Commission approved that last December, so we're looking forward on implementation. Trail maintenance, this item doesn't necessarily have any specifics, but with many of the folks in the room working with Jeff Potter on Muscle Powered, trail maintenance remains a pretty active part of managing open space properties. And then weed control is another project we stay actively engaged, particularly in the spring. On page 4, the annual report to the Board of Supervisors, that is also on your agenda for discussion tonight. Fees and charges. We started drafting fees last year, and I believe the hope is to get those completed this year. Development plans. Things are booming. Development is booming in Carson, so these development plans are coming into our department to see if there's any impacts to parks and open space. Vern Cron is our primary lead on that, but as it pertains to open space, he does consult with me as well. the East Shore Tahoe Trail. The North Demonstration Project, as it was once known, from Incline Village to Sand Harbor, the next summer of construction will continue this year. I think it still has 2 more summers for construction as well. Page 5, I actually put 2 big asterisks on this page. The second item, the programmatic agreement with the State Historic Preservation Office. This is a requirement that we need to do because of the 3,500 acres of BLM lands that exchanged to the city. There are many, many elements of this programmatic agreement, including a stewardship plan, and we just have not been spending time on this, and we're at the point we need to. They're ready to put the hammer down on us to get some agreements in place. And then under the trails category here, number 2, coordinate planning efforts with the Forest Service for the Capitol to State Park Trail and the Lincoln Bypass Trail. And then on page 5, vehicle access and/or recreation. Through the National Off-Highway Vehicle Conservation Council, working in partnership with us, they were awarded a grant for the south end of Prison Hill. And so they will begin an inventory assessment and management plan in that area. We've already had our kickoff meeting, and so the inventories, I believe, will begin around April or May. So those are just a few of the highlighted items. Are there any comments, questions, concerns, additions?
All right, go ahead, Jerry.
How many of these items on this to-do list were on last year's to-do list, and how far did you get down that list last year?
Most of them were on the list, and actually what I had thought about doing, and it's probably a great thing to do for the future, is I should have used like track changes as I deleted them off the list, so you could see what we actually did accomplish. So we did get things accomplished last year. I can't give you a number offhand, I can't recall. But so many of our projects are just long-term projects.
Donna?
Yeah, on the list you have that maybe in the next year or 2 you're going to have to replace the roof at Red House. And this may not be the best project, but I would like you to consider, when you're going to do something like that, to look at the new Tesla roofs, because they claim that they're no more expensive than a standard roof, and you get energy out of them, which could save on that bill. But this one, the Red House, may have a little too much shade to be considered, but to at least look at those as a potential, because if we could eliminate the Nevada energy cost too, and even heating, maybe if you convert it to all electric heating. Just a suggestion.
You probably have SHPO to deal with in that, but
But the new roofs that Tesla has, they look just like a regular roof. They don't look like solar panels or anything else. They're beautiful.
we may need you. Margie?
And I wanted to comment, this is a very ambitious plan, and I'm wondering why there aren't 2 more office staff in the budget to help you get this all accomplished.
Jeremy, do you have any comments or thoughts?
Sure. We talked about it a little bit last time, but the last meeting, but really, what are the hurdles left for the PA to move forward with the site stewardship program?
There's a couple elements to the entire programmatic agreement. One is adding maybe an addendum to the existing agreement that defines what can we repair, like at step 1, 2, and 3. Can we repair a fence without checking in with SHPO every time? Other things like roof replacements, we do understand that's a bigger impact, so we do need to consult with them. So it's identifying those different levels of checking in with them. And then there's the stewardship plan element of that. And just last week, I did receive a draft stewardship plan, and One of the reasons the stewardship plan has moved very slowly is because the SHPO office has never written a stewardship plan for a non-federal agency. So they do have a stewardship program with the feds, but it was different for them to put language for us to comply with, as well as how do we handle crimes that might happen on cultural resources. So they did just send us that draft last week, and I know, Jeremy, you've offered to help us with that process, so I will forward that to you for review. And then the next phase of that is SHPO, will take full responsibility of training volunteers who will report to SHPO regarding our cultural resources.
Thanks. Was there a discussion, you'll have to remind me because I can't remember where we left on it, a discussion of this addendum of the types of materials that are allowed or maybe disallowed, and how we might handle those in an MOU with SHPO so that certain types of repairs don't need to go through the process where some types of repairs would. Was that still part of the plan? And I guess who ultimately is going to be drafting that and sending it to SHPO?
We have been talking with Mike Drews about that. Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Jerry?
Is it possible to get finishing dates on any of these projects that you have in front of you? I mean, it would be nice to have an idea of your time frames and completion deadlines, just so that we have a general feeling for how much work is actually on your plate, because it looks overwhelming to me. So I'd kind of like to get an idea of how these things are going to fall off, and you're going to continue not to go crazy at what you're doing. So
I think that's a great idea. I would love to put some dates down with target goals and show success.
well, in order for me to go forward with approving your plan, I would like to have those dates myself, but that's just speaking for me.
And since I don't have that tonight, I will provide that at the next meeting.
Other questions or comments from the committee? There are 3 empty seats I can see up here in the front row if anybody from the back wants to come up. There's 2 on the right, and there's 1 next to this old guy on the left.
Talking about you, Jason.
Okay, it is an ambitious work program, and we've always had more things than we could do. And I think, I understand Jerry's concern, because we don't want to, you've given us a substantial list of things. Obviously, we can't get to all of them, but they all need to be, they've been identified and they have priorities. Perhaps, and I think we're going to run into timing issues with our presentation to the Board of Supervisors, but it would seem to me, Ann, that as part of what you might be working on for our next Open Space Committee meeting would be either priorities or ones that could be done with some help, some outside help, ones that follow other ones, something that would help the committee get a better feel for helping a more manageable, process, so that we can decide, do we want to commit some dollars to, we have outside consultants we use in a sparing way. Maybe there's some things that would be worthwhile. If we have a number of things that are held up because of the SHPO programmatic agreement, maybe that's an emphasis area, just because it has kind of the domino effect. So that might be helpful. But with regard to timing, do we need to take tonight's action to the Board of Supervisors in order to fit into their budget process, or how do you see that? How does that fit?
This particular action item, we don't necessarily need to take to the Board of Supervisors right away. However, if there's perhaps anything that you see in here that you would like to add to the budget, that is an action that we will need tonight.
Say that again now.
So on 3H, which is recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the budget, that is an action that we will need tonight because we need to provide direction, I think, in 2 weeks' time. So it's always such a short time frame.
Yeah,
on the
that's,
budget.
that's different than what we're dealing with here.
Correct.
Obviously, there's some tie-in, but that's somewhat different. So what Jerry's requested and what we've talked a little bit about, is that feasible for our next meeting to help the committee
Yes.
focus a little bit better and maybe provide a little bit more support and direct input to you? Okay. Are there any public comments at this point?
Or can I say something?
I'm sorry, Joanne. Go ahead, Joanne.
I was just going to say that along with your time frames, you might put also who's the lead on this. I know I'm looking at some of these, and I know, like you're saying, we're waiting on SHPO for things, or waiting on, I know the conservation easements, or waiting on the land trust. So when we're thinking about where we might be able to help or where we might need help, we can also see who is working on certain items.
Good. Jerry?
Well, the reason that I'm so concerned, I think, is about the future items that are on this agenda. There's things to acquire new land for open space, and I'm wondering, what does that do to your work schedule? Does that add to your work schedule? Does that replace some of the items that you have prioritized with other actions that need to be done? I mean, that's why I wanted to have this moved up so we could decide is it even feasible for you to continue doing your going on with your planning if you have more stuff to do and more area to cover. I'm curious about that, and I'm concerned about that.
Yes, exactly. Anything that's added to the list does impact my time. The item I penciled in on the agenda, the ham acquisition, I'm gently looking back into the audience. I have talked with Jeff Potter when the ham acquisition was initially brought forward to us, kind of quickly for potential acquisition, because the last motion by the board, by the Open Space Advisory Committee, was just to sit back and wait and see what happens with development and try to have trails constructed at that time. This was a project brought in front of the committee. I shared with Jeremy Hall as well. I said, we don't have staff time. To get an application in by the initial deadline of March 23rd, we can't do it. Jeff has stepped up to do that, so as long as we have help, we can do a lot more things. How much would it impact? Yes, it would impact me, maybe reviewing the report, but if Jeff is still willing to work on the application, it reduces my workload, particularly for that project.
And the other acquisitions?
Clear Creek is completely on my shoulders.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other committee comments or questions? Any public comments? Any public input? Okay, we have an ambitious work program that we are talking about maybe complementing with some additional information. Is it appropriate to continue this item to our next meeting? Is that okay? Do we have a motion to that effect?
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors a work program outline for fiscal year 2018 to 2019.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a motion to approve the work program. And my understanding would be then that we would potentially take action on that tonight, but we would have further information at our next meeting. Is that everybody's understanding? Okay, is that okay, Ann?
Works for me,
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on that motion? Any public comment? All right, all in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Item number 3C, recommend to the Board of Supervisors regarding approval of a grant application.
3B.
I'm sorry, I missed 3B, you're right. Excuse me. to provide comments on the conceptual design for trail and trailhead improvements at East Silver Saddle Ranch. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With us tonight is Grace Larson with Design Workshop. We have been working with Design Workshop to help us look at the greater impacts of East Silver Saddle Ranch down on Sierra Vista Lane, identify the trails, the natural resource issues, and to lead a public workshop that we had with the neighbors down on Sierra Vista Lane. And so Grace can help us walk through the conceptual designs at this point, as well as maybe some of the comments that we heard from the neighbors.
Hello, my name is Grace Larson with Design Workshop, and also on this project is Ben Fish, who's not here with me tonight. Our sort of main goals for this project were to introduce river access and day use along the river in this project area, as well as consolidating and decommissioning some of the existing trails for environmental and management purposes. You can see here in the first section of our conceptual plan, this is the northernmost portion of the project area. We start with a proposed parking area and trailhead with potential for restroom facilities that would lead to a day use area and river access adjacent to the river. And when we say day use, we're thinking this could include activities such as picnicking, potential shelter for gathering, interpretive kiosks, and signage. And then you can see in light gray are some of the existing trails that we propose to decommission. There's a lot of redundancy on these trails that causes environmental hazards and management issues. So we propose to consolidate these trails into a singular loop. The trail on the west side we call the river trail along the Carson River, and then coming back up on the east side would be the upland trail. In addition to the Sierra Vista Lane improvements, we noticed there were a couple areas where there had been aprons that were marked off along the project area that we thought we potentially could take advantage of by proposing additional parking areas or pullouts. You can see that there with the second parking area. These may or may not make their way into the final version of this plan, but we just wanted to propose that as an opportunity for additional parking. This parking area would be connected to another river access with a connector trail then running between the upland and river trails. Moving on to section 2. You can see the river trail continuing along the river with an existing drainage route leading to the river, another day use area with river access that's connected to the upland trail, and then again a number of existing trails that we propose to decommission. And then moving on to section 3, we have a proposed parking area and trailhead that would be constructed with the Sierra Vista Lane improvements, and this would be a gravel parking lot with, I believe, a concrete apron for ADA parking and an ADA accessible restroom. And this has a connection to a larger day use area with river access. And then our river trail continues south to one final river access point connected to another potential parking area. And then the trail then connects to the upland trail, and then that loop is completed up north back to the beginning of the site. A few weeks ago, we hosted a stakeholder open house and had some great public comment from the neighbors. A quick summary of that, people were very interested in having river access at this site. They were also really interested in having multi-use activities on these trails, so that would include non-motorized, bike access, dogs on leashes, potentially horse access as well. And there's also a lot of interest in trying to work in some ADA accessibility into the trail network, whether it's a portion of the network or a single trail, allowing access, universal access along the Carson River. People were also interested in day use and picnic activities, and there was also a lot of concern about blocking off propose parking areas with bollards and barriers to prevent any further vehicular access to those trails and decommissioned trails. And again, this is to simplify management and to improve environmental conditions along the river.
Thank you, Grace. Any questions, comments from the committee? Yes, Donna.
Yeah, I see you, because last time we looked at this, we had just the one southern parking lot, and now we've got, 4 parking lots potentially? Is there going to be money for those? And for the restrooms, are you talking the porta potty type things that we've been using at some of the other sites?
So, correct. On the map here, this is segment 3, so the southern part of Sierra Vista Lane. Currently, on the map also, on the east side of Sierra Vista Lane is the equestrian and OHV trailhead, and the new road will be constructed down to the aquatic trailhead, and this is mile 0. That is actually under construction as we speak. The entire Sierra Vista Lane project began on February 1st and is anticipated to be under construction for the next 2 to 2.5 months. So this is already part of Public Works project. The other trailheads to the north existing are already dirt areas. So it's a matter of what do we do in these areas in general for a management plan of this area. Right now, as we saw on our trip several months ago, it's pretty much uncontrolled vehicle access with a lot of resource damage. So that's why we hired Design Workshop to help us identify what are some of better solutions in this area. We did hear from the neighbors that they do like having multiple parking lots, and it's nice to have a couple trails that make that circle. Whether we do more toilets in this area, I think that's up for discussion. What is currently planned on segment 3 is a portable toilet.
Margie?
I just want to keep it in the forefront of everybody's mind that we have an agreement along the Carson River to allow the river to move. The river needs its floodplain access. So any work that we're going to do down there by the river, we need to be able to throw it away. And so that's just the way it is. We can't go in there and start armoring to protect it, because that will not allow the river to move as it needs to. So I just wanted to make sure that that stays in everyone's thoughts as we move forward on this project.
Thank you, Margie. Alan?
This is kind of going the opposite direction as Margie, but my concern is the safety at the river access points, is how we're going to make that both safe and let the river do what it wants. And so I don't know what the concept there is, because if you don't want concrete aprons, what are we going to do?
And I think one of the things that would be helpful for us is if you can help define what you think of for safety. Is it safety for river access? Is it safety, like the trail conditions, maintenance? If you can just help elaborate on your thoughts.
I was specifically thinking about during high flows, some of those access points, one, are kind of muddy, slippery. People can be falling in. There's some debris there that people get caught in strainers. So there's the safety issue of just launching and getting on the river without having something bad happen to people. So that's my concern, is the safety as you launch or get out of the river.
Just to answer that a little bit, the old Carson River Advisory Committee and the Carson Water Sub-Conservancy District aren't banning construction at all. It's just a process for smart construction. So if we build a bridge, it needs to have footings far enough back that it won't have to be armored to protect it from the usual flood, probably a 5-year flood. I'm not sure exactly what it said in the in the master planning, floodplain management documents that were agreed to by all the counties. But it just means taking very careful and smart, thoughtful steps in what you do with things.
Yeah, my comment was, I guess, directed towards, in this conceptual plan, I would like to see some of that discussion so that the committee could react to that.
I think we do have a concrete ramp existing today at Morgan Mill. We have a fishing pier down on the, not far from the parking area. And so there, I think, are a lot of ways to make this kind of thing work. We just need to be cognizant of what Margie is saying. Other comments or questions? I had a couple. How integrated are the potential parking areas with the plans for Sierra Vista Lane? Are they, is it feasible to add later on, if we had financial capability, those parking areas?
I believe that our intention with proposing parking along the aprons is to allow for potential phasing with the parking areas as well. So that that third parking area in Section 3, as Ann mentioned, is under construction, and then with the aprons and the other 3 locations, that could allow us to potentially add on additional parking as we see needed in the future.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do here is take a stretch of the river that's been pretty unmanaged and really focus a little bit of management, maybe a little bit of development to encourage use in appropriate areas with some additional facilities, and really tighten down, if you will, on kind of the random ability to go anywhere if you can, if you can drive there, to focus a little bit more directly. And that's going to have a significant impact on the current access. And I think in many respects that's reflective of what this committee has recommended. But it is going to be a change, and hopefully it'll be a change with a little more focused areas, a little better ability to patrol and monitor, a little more safety, both from a traffic standpoint as well as from a personal safety standpoint. I would recommend one consideration, and that is the potential day use area on your second slide. I think you need a parking location reasonably close to that for people to feel like it's very usable for them. At this point, I will be happy to open it up to public comment. We'll come back.
I have one more comment.
Go ahead, Donna.
Yeah, what is the plan now, once we get the new development in there, to get rid of all of those old roads? How are we going to do that?
And I might have missed answering one of your earlier questions too, is about funding and how do we get funding. So the south parking lot was funded through the Federal Lands Access Program grant. Any improvements to the north would probably be similar to what we're doing at the 5th Street Trailhead, and that project, Prison Hill 5th Street Trailhead, and that project is funded through the Recreational Trails Program. So that is a great source of funding for us. In addition, because this is right along the river, the Carson Water Sub-Conservancy District is another great funding source for us. And then, so let me move to, what's that? Yep, so the way segment 3 is constructed, along the entire route and around the parking area, there will be a fence. So when people are coming in from the south, vehicular access will essentially be closed off. That's the first part of doing any reclamation and restoration areas is how do you close them off? And then what is the actual implementation process? Maritza, our high school representative, in her past meetings has offered the high school various groups to help us with projects. Lindsay and Maritza did go down here about a week or two ago, so Maritza could see for herself. And we were pleased to hear that she does go down there walking with her mom, so she was already familiar with it. And so we have talked about to help areas become restored more quickly, it's better to put plants in rather than just seed. And so people will have to walk around plants to avoid them. So we would like to take a proactive approach on getting some establishment in the damaged areas.
Lots of room for Eagle Scout projects. Okay, I'd like to open it up to public comment. Is there any public comment? All right. If any of you in the public are users out there, we're going to need everybody's help as we work through this process to try to take a very nice portion of the Carson River and eliminate some of the overuse and really focus on making it available to people in a way that will hopefully be something they can really appreciate as part of this Silver Saddle complex. Okay. Grace, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you, and thanks, Ann.
Okay, please make sure you sign your name if you didn't already. Thank you very much. Are there any other comments, or do we have a motion then? Go ahead, Jeremy.
I move to provide comments on the conceptual design for trail and trailhead improvements at East Silver Saddle Ranch.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we know what our comments are? What we've talked about? Those are the things that we want to, we have a list of comments that were, I think, feedback from the listening session and meetings. Do we want to move those forward in the motion, or do we want further discussion on any of those specific items?
I would like to move this all forward in the motion and just continue. It's direction for the design team to know how to move, to come up with next steps, is the way I see it.
Okay. Is that comfortable with everybody on the committee? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, now we get to item 3C. Recommend to the Board of Supervisors regarding approval of a grant application to the Forest Legacy Program for fee title acquisition of approximately 100 acres located in the Clear Creek area and administered by the Nevada Division of State Lands. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the introduction, I have a few slides that I will show to the committee and to the public for orientation. So for an orientation, we're talking about 100 acres located to the west of Carson City. So you all can see the developed area of Carson City at the bottom of the screen. So Highway 50, I'll go into the larger view for you. Highway 50 to the west to Lake Tahoe. About halfway up towards Spooner Summit at the interchange, Golf Club Drive, is the 100 acres that we're talking about, currently owned by the Nevada Division of State Lands. And for those who have been around long enough, it was also the old Clear Creek camp. When we had this item in front of the committee last time, it was in December 2016, it was a discussion of how do we move forward working with the state in acquiring trailhead and trail facilities in the area. The direction at that time was to try to acquire maybe 5 or 10 acres to accommodate just what we needed. There have been several meetings since that time with Mr. Charlie Donahue, who is the administrator of state lands, and Basically, he's unwilling to accept that offer on the table. So he counter-offered with the opportunity of working with NDOT and a small area in their right-of-way to only accommodate 4 to 6 cars. I did bring that back to Carson City staff, which, because it's in the right-of-way and adjacent to the road, there are significant safety impacts, and the Carson City was not willing to accept the offer in the right-of-way. So then going back to the next discussion, also, and why is Charlie unwilling to allow us to purchase 5 or 10 acres? He's concerned that it will affect the value of his property. And so he said 100 acres are on the table. So prior to bringing this back to the committee, we did go out to the property with our open space evaluation form and reviewed the open space master plan. And I thought it was interesting reviewing the plan. It wasn't identified for acquisition. And in fact, there were specific notes in the plan that everyone thought it was probably protected because it was owned by the state and it was in the forest. And so maybe if folks at that time thought it was threatened, maybe it would have been highlighted as a very important property, especially now with vehicular access there and the trail, the Clear Creek Trail. It's really highly desirable. So on this property, staff did have the chance to go out with the open space evaluation form, and you can see that all the criteria that have previously identified, this property's pretty high in what, at least in the past, open space thought was important for the purchase of the residents of Carson City. A few other things I'd like to share with the committee up here. So the first map, let me just go back there for a minute so you can see the adjacent landowners. So just down in the corner here in pink is state lands. Most of the property is to the south of Highway 50. It does adjoin U.S. Forest Service property to the west, so it really is at the edge of development. At the bottom of the map is the county line, so it's right next to Douglas County. There are a couple houses right along Golf Club Drive, and then to the north it is an undeveloped parcel, pretty much undevelopable because it's kind of on the hillside, but I guess if you see development in California, everything can be developed. And then to the north, the blue is Carson City land, and this was part of our Horse Creek fee title acquisition. So it is adjacent to a lot of public lands already. Then just on an aerial map, what does it look like? It's a really beautiful forest. And I think that's one of the unique characteristics of this property. Open space, we really only have one other property that is forested, and that's at the top of Ash Canyon. So the location of this and the access to the public has amazing opportunities for education, smaller loops within the complex, perhaps even one day maybe having a paved loop, so families with young children can come out in strollers and just experience the forest. And then a few pictures. Traveling down Golf Club Drive, there is actually already an apron, an asphalt road apron that probably drove into the old Clear Creek camp. So just looking at the existing environment, this is a really safe area for vehicles to slow down or speed up to pull onto the street. At the west end of the property, there's signage here to notify folks that they are entering the Clear Creek Trail. And then just a few more pictures of the property itself. We are looking at grant funds, whether it was a purchase of 5 or 10 acres. That is something that we could have afforded on our own, but to purchase 100 acres, we do not. I have been talking with Nevada Division of Forestry, and Heather Geiger is here with us again tonight as we always look at those grant programs. So I have been talking with Division of Forestry about their grant programs to help us with this acquisition. Are there any questions?
Okay, we'll start with you, Donna.
Can you go back to the blow-up picture, the close look at the property, and tell me where the Fagan property is that we are in the process of trying to purchase in relation to that? I was thinking the other one you had that, you had,
The aerial?
Yeah.
That one? Yep.
Yeah.
Right here. Right
okay,
next to it.
so then we would really have almost,
And we already own this one.
yeah.
Carson City
Okay.
does.
And do we know how much we're talking about?
Dollar-wise, only using the assessor's database as potential value. And so in their database, for all of us, anyone who has property, you can go in there and look at the taxable value. The value that they have placed on this was a little over $1 million. And that's with the current zoning. So, and also in the past, one of the issues that has complicated this whole piece of the puzzle was the desire to rezone these 20-acre parcels into 5-acre parcels to increase that value.
Yeah, I think you have kind of conflicting goals here. I think the Division of State Lands is mandated when they sell property to maximize the value. And there was an attempt to rezone 2 or 3 years ago that was turned down by the Board of Supervisors. So I'm sure that if we were to move forward, obviously it would require an appraisal. And I don't know what guidelines State Lands has in terms of accepting appraisals, but if we were to move forward, presumably we would jointly select an appraiser, or they would select an appraiser that we would concur with in order to try to make sure we didn't get to a situation where we had invested money and they weren't willing to go forward. But that's down the road should we decide to pursue grant applications. Other comments? Jeremy?
Can I add one more comment?
Sure.
It is also important to know another piece of this puzzle, and that some of the folks in this room can tell you they've been trying to work on this for 10 years. But during the 2015 legislative session, there was Assembly Bill 15, in which the governor asked the state to sell these parcels for the money to go to the Stewart Indian School. So a sale is imminent.
Margie?
I've been working on this for more than 10 years, maybe 2005, 2006. I remember Juan Guzman and I were up there trying to figure out a way to get an easement across that property because the state absolutely wasn't going to sell it. And then the 2015 Senate thing came down, and here we go again. It is a beautiful piece of property, but I'm concerned about all of the work to write the grant, and how are we, that's an awful lot of money.
Okay, thank you. Other comments? Alan, anything you had at this point? Jeremy?
Just curious, but what, if awarded a particular grant, how much could it actually cover? I mean, I know it's dependent on the type of grant, but would we be chasing something that was like a 50% match? Because then, 500,000 is a little bit better to stomach.
I'll ask Heather Geiger to step up. She can tell you about the 2 grant programs that are an option, but we are leaning more towards one because of the funding available, and I think the match as well.
Hi, Heather.
Hi.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. I'm Heather Geiger, and I work for the Nevada Division of Forestry. I'm actually the coordinator for the Forest Legacy Program. And so we have 2 options. The Forest Legacy Grant itself is 75-25. So if we applied for that, it would pay for 75% of the costs, and then 25% would need to be the match. There's also an option to do the Community Forest Program, and that would be a 50-50 split. And we could potentially even apply for both, knowing that sometimes those projects take 2 or 3 rounds of funding before they're actually moved to, sort of the top of the list and are actually awarded funding.
Thank you. You have a question for Heather?
Well, kind of for everybody. Doesn't this property shed water into Clear Creek, and could there be potentially through the water district some other funding?
So the hillside here, yes, does flow right down in, eventually into Clear Creek. It's not adjacent to Clear Creek, but yes, it does flow in that direction. And so what are you, you said
Thinking
the
protecting
water
it from
district.
development because
but-
it's a watershed.
Yeah, and you asked if there's funding from the water district, from
Wait, from
Carson
the-
Water Subconservancy?
Yeah.
Nowhere in this frame. I mean, we could
Okay.
ask for some, but it'd probably maybe be 20, 30,000. But that's great, because I hadn't actually thought about that as a
I'm just looking
source.
for every nickel and dime we could
Yep.
get.
Thank you.
If we were to acquire that land through one of the two grants that you were talking about, Heather, are those land protection agencies? Like, would it be like getting something, having the Nevada Land Trust, working through the Nevada Land Trust, or would it actually be deeded to Carson City in the end?
It would actually be deeded to Carson City, so it would be funding through the Forest Service to acquire the development rights, so it would be for fee purchase. So, yep, it would be yours.
Other committee, Jerry?
Refresh my memory, but wasn't this an integral part of some trail system hooking Douglas County to Ash Canyon, or?
Kings Canyon eventually. Right away, the Clear Creek Trail ends at this property. So with immediate purchase, it would be open to the public, and there's already a trail on the south side of 50. The big vision for the city, then, let me go back to the map here, would be using the underpass
Right,
at Golf
that's what I
Club Drive, coming to the north. We have a number of options. There's a number of people in the room who have been out exploring, and Alan Welch and I have gone out as well. The ideal would maybe be traveling to the east because of the lower topography and lower slopes connecting into the Clear Creek, into Kings Canyon. Alternatively, because we do own the property to the north, we can go straight up, but it is very, very steep. And this is Kings Canyon right here. And then the Ash to Kings Trail is to the north.
Yeah, I think, Jerry, the short answer is it's a critical piece of that trail system as it's been envisioned.
That's what I remembered.
Yeah. Okay, any other comments from the committee? Okay, I can't imagine. Go ahead.
So if we were to apply for this grant program, and do you see that this would rank high in terms of prospects for getting it? And if we were to get it, how much time do we have to raise the remaining quarter, 25%?
It's always a little bit tricky to know how high it would rank, but it has a number of things going for it in terms of the purpose of those grants is to really expand open space and make more areas accessible to the public, and so it's very strong in those areas. It's also imminently threatened by development, and we can make a strong case for that we know that it's to be developed soon. For either of those grants, one area that we struggle a little bit with is we have to make a good argument in terms of sensitive species or habitat and those sorts of things, because there are a number of grants throughout the nation that rank highly because they are protecting, say, endangered species with these types of properties. So it certainly has a lot going for it, and it would be dependent a bit on how the grant is written to make sure that all of the strong points were put forward. Typically, it's a bit of a slow-moving process with those, and it takes between 3 and 5 years to finish. There has to be both an appraisal and then a review appraisal that are approved by federal standards. So by the time that's typically completed and the easement is, either the easement or the fee acquisition are written, it can be several years before the project closes out. And so there would be time to acquire additional funding. And then you would probably have about a year lead before you even knew if it was going to be funded. So it would be long-term.
Yes, Jeremy.
To answer your question about how much lead time she just answered it too, how much lead time we would need to actually raise the funds. On item 3H, we've got a line item here that's for land acquisition, and we have a surplus of 1.3 million, so we actually could buy it now.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Yes, Jennifer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to be the wet blanket by any means, but I do want to bring us a little bit back to reality about the state of our staff and the workload that we have. So we manage over 7,000 acres. As a department, we have over 8,000 acres that we have to manage. That's tremendous, and it's a great achievement. We have, more parks per capita in Carson City than the national average. It's a real testament to the city. But adding another 100 acres, really adds, it's not exactly right next to all of our other parks or open space. It is in the vicinity. We're not up there all the time. But we should have a little brief discussion about how we're going to operate and maintain this, and maybe what partnerships we could enter into to help cooperatively manage this area. And I think it's worth that discussion, and if we're going to pursue that and potentially either purchase something or go after grant funding, we have to be really thoughtful on how we're going to go forward on that. So I'm open to any ideas or suggestions. I know I've beat this discussion to death with Ann. It comes up all the time, but it's an important thing to have. We have a really great trail partner with Muscle Powered. We have a lot of really great organizations that help with us and work with us. But groups like Nevada Land Trust, they help facilitate these things, and then they hand it off to the local government to figure out those operations and maintenance situations. They're not in the capacity to really help in that realm. So we're open to any suggestions or ideas that you have. It also makes us have a stronger application when there's partnerships and things like that. But obviously the regional trail connectivity is amazing. We could have a wonderful location for a trailhead. It has a lot of wonderful values for wildlife and other means, but operations and maintenance is a reality. So how are we going to go about doing that?
What do you foresee as operational and maintenance costs? I mean, I was just kind of curious. It looks to me like it's just a trail that, I know they get destroyed with rains and stuff like that. You're talking about.
If we build a developed trailhead, we're going to have to be there regularly to have a presence. You don't want to have that unattended. You have illegal dumping. You have people illegally cutting down trees on properties. We have homeless issues. We have a lot of issues throughout our entire park system, including open space. So there's a lot of management issues, even if it's undeveloped, that's important to keep on top of.
Thank you, Jennifer. And I'm sure some of the folks in the audience may have some ideas on that too. With that, and we'll come back to any further committee comments, I'd like to open it up. Heather, thank you for yours. There may be some questions that you will need to address, but feel free to sit to the side, or we'll let other folks come up and make their comments, and then if we have the need for further discussion, you'll certainly be a part of it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your information. Public comments, inputs at this point? Sir, would you please be sure and put your name down so we get the spelling right?
So we can read it.
Allman Guzman. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for your welcoming. I'm Juan Guzman. I used to be the open space manager for Carson City not too long ago. About 4 years ago, I retired. Presently, I am the president-elect for the Carson Valley Trails Association. I am also a member of the board of Muscle Powered. So I have more conflicts than you can even figure it out. Let's begin by saying the strategic importance of this trailhead, like was alluded, it is huge. It's very important in terms of connecting both counties, also in terms of continuing the trend of having a mid-elevation trail in between along the Sierra front. As you know, the premier, if you don't know, I'm just about to tell you, probably the premier trail on this part is the Tahoe Rim Trail, which just borders and is just normally or is higher than. So this trail will allow the ability to connect for people like me that can ride, more easy terrain. And it doesn't even work that way. And the folks at Muscle Power, including myself, are going to tell you, well, we have a national award that says that our trail, Ash to Kings, was selected as the Trail of the Year. So in terms of importance and strategic importance, strategic planning, it is very important. Then comes we have explored for 4 years now, 4 years very intensively. We have explored for 10 years, and like Margie says, even longer than that, loose alternatives about how to build this thing, how to build this trailhead. But in the last 4 years, we have intensively pursued avenues, and it seems that finally state land is coming with one potential way that we can acquire all the land plus some others in order to be able to develop the trailhead. So I will advise the committee and the board of supervisors, or I will ask you to take it very seriously, because again, it has been a very hard road to get to this point. Very, very tired of getting no from state lands. And that's in this trail. State land has been very helpful with other grants and with other programs. So it's not that it's specific to this thing that we have this problem of not being able to find a solution so quickly. I also wanted to address the issue of which concerns most of you, which is maintenance. Carson Valley Trails Association maintains about 11 trails in Douglas County presently, and we build them as well. And we fund through grants most of it, including the NEPA, paying for NEPA, which we have for portions of this project already done in the past through the Forest Service. We have spent already about $65,000 in the past on doing NEPA for this project. There are some other people that will testify that will give you more specific about where the trails are connected, but there's a spur going to the north to Spooner Summit, back into Douglas County, and then hopefully under the bridge into Carson City. I have some propaganda, some information about Carson Valley Trails, and I will begin with Tommy and pass it along, and there should be enough for each one of you. And most of you are familiar with our information, but I will be remiss if I don't bring it to you. And it just so happens that in this issue of trail connection, this great reading, Mr. Scott, I highly recommend it. Put it in your list. This issue specifically has the story of the trail, has the story of we trying to figure out how to build a trailhead in there as well. I also wanted to mention that what makes it very, I believe that what makes your action relatively more simple tonight is that you will be recommending to the board to look into a grant or to apply for a grant. At the time that you do that, and yes, that requires quite a bit of commitment and quite a bit of staff work, and we'll help Ann and the Parks Department as much as we can. But what I mean to tell you is that at the time that the grant process is through, then you will have a much better idea of value, and you will have a much better idea of what are the fine prints, what are the fine print requirements, and if the same thing, if it's something that you can get into or not. So this is just a perfect way to look into the feasibility of an option to buy this piece of land that is very important for our master plan, for Douglas County master plan, and for the entire Western Sierra. I still haven't managed to keep my hands on the check, Mr. Chairman. One more thing to tell you is that we have experience with the legacy program, and we were successful with one of our nominations. It's sort of a different side of the legacy program, but it was a similar national competition, and we did really well. And it was for...
And it remains the only one in the state.
Yes.
I'll zoom out on the map here. The properties up here, Ash Canyon Road travels up by Hobart Reservoir, so the two properties at the top of Ash Canyon were also funded by the Forest Legacy Program.
Thank you, Juan. Are you finishing up?
That concludes my remarks. Yes,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you very much for the consideration with regard to trails maintenance and the activities that Carson Valley Trails Group has done. It's amazing what's happened in the valley, and the Carson Valley Trails folks are to be commended. And Muscle Power, of course, has been an ally here and a strong supporter, and I'm glad to see them working on both sides. So thank you for your comments. Yes.
Hi, my name is Jenny Scanlon, and I too have a bunch of hats that I have to make sure and disclose that I am here as a Muscle Power board member, not as the past RTP manager or Land and Water Conservation Fund or OHV grant manager. So I just want to disclose that. In Muscle Power, we have more than just trail builders. We also have to put together a trail team which will write grants helping Mr. Potter, so he's not alone. And that is Juan, myself, and Laura Richards, who's a past Department of Wildlife. And we have on our list to help Carson City in writing of these grants. Between the four of us, we have quite a bit of I could say many years of writing grants. So I just wanted to throw out two ideas. One is legacy money is national, and you have to apply nationally for that. Land and Water Conservation Fund is not national. It is federal money, but it is statewide. And unfortunately, Land and Water can't match the Forest Legacy, if I'm right, because Forest Legacy actually comes from the Land and Water Conservation Fund overall. But Recreational Trails Program can also pay for land that is purchased for recreation purposes, and those could match. So if you're looking at trying to figure out how Carson City may not be putting out much of its dollar for the purchase of this, it could be by working with our team, and we would love to work with Carson City on that to figure out a funding strategy on how to do that, so that we wouldn't even have to come up with match. It would almost all be federal funding anyway, so it's the same requirements. And in terms of the maintenance, I did have some ideas on the maintenance of that, because it's not just a trail. You also have fuels and you have forest up there, and you do have pine needle. When I worked for NDF way back when, we actually did clearances up there and fuels reduction on the pine beetle. So you do have a pine beetle problem up there. So one idea is to have an MOU with NDF, because their crews need to be trained, and they need areas for training all the time so that they can become certified in marking as well as chainsaw work. Another one is the Great Basin Institute and their Nevada Conservation Corps, who every year needs a place to do their training on fuels reduction for their crews. So you're getting 20 people out there at once, if not more, and we could become the training ground for the Nevada Conservation Corps as well as inmate crews. A very good partnership that would benefit everybody. So I think that is it for me as a Muscle Powered board member and member of the Trails team at Muscle Powered.
Thank you, Jenny. Even though you're conflicted, you're always welcome here. Some of us have lots of conflicts, so. But what I'm hearing from Juan and from what Jenny was saying is some significant offers of support, both in the grant application process, in the operations and maintenance process, and in the support to try to pull together the best possible grant applications and combination of grants to try to minimize our local match. So, other public comments?
Frank Forsgren, private citizen here in Carson City. I want to encourage the board or the commission to support this purchase. This trailhead, the north end of the Clear Creek Trail, doesn't have an existing trailhead and it's a perfect place to go on a hot summer day for a hike, and one of the few trailheads that does provide access to forest hiking close into the city. I also would echo Juan's noting of the strategic importance of this trailhead and this trail system to continue the development along the eastern front of the Sierra. With that, I'll conclude my comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for signing in. Mr. Lurie.
Good evening, Mr. Scott and committee members. My name is Carlo Lurie. I also represent the Carson Valley Trails Association. I'm also a volunteer with the Douglas County Trails Program. And I won't repeat there's been a lot of great points made about this trail. I think you sense there's a lot of support from the audience. But I'll just point out the most important fact is that this is the only safe crossing of Highway 50. Highway 50 is almost insurmountable safety obstacle to transiting north-south on our trails. And Carson Valley Trails Association has 10.5 miles of built trail that already come right up to this property, and 17 miles of approved trail linking to this property with a connection to the Tower Rim Trail. So you get this property, you get an awesome trail network already there, and the opportunity to connect to the Ash to Kings Trail as well. So I think it's really important strategic property. The other thing is State Lands has made no secret of the fact that they want to develop this. So if this property is not protected, it's going to get developed, and that's really not an appropriate place to put more development. There's a high fire hazard, there's watershed issues. I think it's really important that this property be protected and kept for the public to use. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Other public comment?
Good evening. Jason Kuchniki, citizen here in Carson City. I just wanted to make 3 points. Carson Valley Trails Association and Muscle Power definitely to be commended. They've done amazing work, and I have no doubt that if this was to move forward, that they would continue to do the great work. I know that they had mentioned that they have quite a few people with vast experience in preparing these grant applications, but I wouldn't hesitate to maybe get some of those land conservation entities involved, reaching out to them, because they really do have expertise that a lot of time goes untapped, and so they can search and they can help with searching out those matching funds. So I really do feel that it probably in the end is going to be very little that Carson City actually puts out. My second point is that benefit is going to be reaped, because, I mean, if we have this Sierra Front mountain biking, hiking trail for recreational purposes, that's just going to produce so much benefit in terms of tourism and dollars and getting people in here. I mean, Carson City is already, we've just since these trails have gone in, I mean, look at what we've got. We've got the epic bike ride. You know, it was one of the first 3 places where this bike ride was featured initially. Not Tahoe, Carson City. I think the potential for biking and hiking here, especially in the wintertime, as we're seeing more of this drought into the future too. My new motto is, when the snow's shitty, bike Carson City. Sorry for that. So if you trademark that, I'm going to ask for royalties. So I think that, you know, it's gonna be it's gonna bring in so much tax dollars. It's gonna, you know, one of the tenets of the economy is my tenets is to just make Carson City a cool place to live, and then that's going to raise the property values as well. So there's some definite economic benefits that we shouldn't be overlooking here. And my third point was just about muscle powered and the maintenance aspect of it. I mean, look at the trails that they've put in already, and I get emails every week from Jeff saying, hey, come on, we're going to go out and do trail maintenance. You know, as soon as something happens, bam, they're out there and they're on it. So that is, you know, there's not a lot of places where you can say that. I think they've proved themselves. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Other public comment? Yes, Marissa.
Hi, this is Heather again. And I would just like to maybe second on that. Another important component of the legacy application is that they want to show that you are economically enhancing local government, particularly sustaining small business or rural economies. So if you can make a strong argument that there is a real economic benefit in terms of tourism, then that would enhance the application as well. So just so that you guys know that that could be potentially a very important partnership.
Great, thank you.
Hi, I'm Joe Foster. I am a board member of Muscle Powered, and I agree with everything we've already heard, so I won't repeat all that, but to add one more thing, it would be good to have a coordination with Carson Valley and Eagle Valley. We've been talking about how we do things. The watershed issue was brought up. You know, those things don't end at a county boundary, so the more we interact with other groups, the better coordination we have. So that's just an addition to everything else I agree with, including what the guy said before me.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for not repeating the exact wording. Okay.
Hi, I'm Larry Marinell. I'm a member of Muscle Powered, and I help Jeff on trail maintenance as well. And I don't have a cool slogan, but this property is currently a bottleneck to this wonderful connection of all these trails. And if we don't go forward with the grant program or some type of grant to get this property, and it is commercially developed, all of this is for nothing. We will have lost the property and the ability to connect these trails together. So it's very important that we get a grant, get the property purchased before it is developed commercially, and we'll be shut out. That was my point. And I agree with everything else everybody else said too. Thanks.
Thank you. Other public comment?
Hello. My name is Craig Olson, and I'm an outsider. I'm from Washoe County. I traveled down here from Incline Village because I think this is a very, very important purchase. And whatever it takes, grants, whatever, I would like to see it go ahead. A little bit about me. Lots of people with many hats, very impressive. Mine, not so much. Vice President of the Incline Village Crystal Bay Historical Society until we rolled it over into the Thunderbird Foundation. Member of FIT, Friends of Incline Trails. We worked on the Incline Trail and the Ponderosa Ranch donation so the Incline Trail could be rolled over into the U.S. Forest Service system. It's currently still with Nevada Land Trust. Takes Forest Service some time to get their shit together. Anyways, the Incline Trail is a fantastic trail. It's pretty much flat. It allows all kinds of users, beginning mountain bikers. We've done a lot of work on it. We did work with TAMBA. I'm a member of TAMBA also. We did work with the Tahoe Rim Trail Association to reroute the trail. It's going to be a fantastic trail for the Incline area. All of Lake Tahoe, as many of you know, we have fantastic trails. It's one of the best places to ride. But guess what? I come down here and ride. I come down here with a lot of my friends that live in the basin, and as the saying goes, if the snow is shitty, come down to Carson City. I met Jeff Potter a number of years back. We own the 5-acre parcel of the old Ponderosa Ranch, where I developed Tunnel Creek Cafe and Flume Trail Bikes, because I totally support biking and hiking. And so Flume Trail Bikes shuttles people to the trailheads, eliminating a lot of vehicle traffic, which I am fully in support of. On top of that, I don't just come down here when the snow's here. I come year-round. I ride Clear Creek, I ride Ash Canyon. I got a chance to meet Jeff a number of years ago. When that first opened up, I jumped onto Clear Creek when that opened up. They're fantastic trails. What I'm saying is you have a bunch of people that live in the basin that come down here to ride your trails. And when we come down here, we go and get gas, we have repairs, we go to the bike shop, and we get something to eat. In fact, Mr. Guzman, I saw him when he was getting retired at Red's 395. We were there after we had a nice bike ride at Ash Canyon. So I say to you, the economic rewards are fantastic. There's lots of people riding them, and we're just the people that live just around the corner from you. There's lots of other people that come out, and we promote these trails all the time. So please do whatever you can to get this parcel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it's nice you come down. We have such a wonderful, so many good trails along the Sierra, and so many more potential, and such a huge cadre of volunteers and people committed to developing new ones, extending them, and maintaining them. And that's really made a big difference. The private assistance that many of the organizations have been able to provide has really made a lot of this happen. So thank you.
And I did fail to mention that I do get Jeff Potter's emails all the time on trail work over here. I haven't made it over to work on his trails, but I'm always start of the season, end of the season, working on clearing trails, trees, maintenance, repairs, and building of new trails. So we're out here. We love doing what we do. We love enjoying the trails, and certainly you've got the people out here that are willing to put the time in and volunteer to help maintain them. Thank you.
Thank you. As we all know, Jeff has really fallen down in the male category lately. We miss him. Any other public comment? Okay. Maybe to summarize what I've heard, there's obviously a lot of interest in consideration of moving forward. We're talking about the first step in a process that potentially will be able to better identify both sources, ultimately look at the total costs, and we have heard tonight substantial offers of assistance in grant applications should it move forward in the operation and maintenance requirements. And I think many of the concerns that Jennifer mentioned will remain. We will have some responsibilities, but it sounds to me like we will also have a significant contribution or a significant commitment from folks who are trail enthusiasts who will be supportive and able to help in ways that will help keep our costs down and hopefully result in more successful grant applications should we go forward. So with that, are there any final comments from the committee? Yes, Alan.
As written, this recommendation only speaks to the Forest Legacy Program. What I'm hearing fairly loud and clear is we should make it much more broad than that. So perhaps we should modify that to say Forest Legacy and other programs.
Okay. When we get to a motion, we'll talk about that further. Any other committee comments? Donna.
I'd just like to make two comments, just for the committee's edification. I'm taking over Trash Mob for Muscle Powered, so if you know of a site. But that's another thing that Muscle Powered does provide as far as the maintenance goes. We'll go clean up any trailhead or trail that we just cleaned up this month, the new section of the freeway multi-use path that opened up, and I don't know how many pounds of trash were in there. But the other thing is, I would like to say I am so thrilled to see all of you here tonight. We usually are talking to an empty room, and I invite you to come back for every one of our meetings. We don't always acquire land, but we do make some important decisions about the land that the city owns. So, or at least recommendations to the Board of Supervisors. But I just wanted to say those two things.
Thank you. Any other committee? Jeremy.
I had just a thought to address Jennifer's comments about maintenance. I hate to put more on your plate, but I'm not sure who else would do it, Ann. Is there a way that we could quantify, or at least provide some sort of an estimate for a property of this size, what the maintenance cost to the city might be? That way we could actually evaluate it with numbers instead of just we've got volunteers left and right that have stated that they're willing to take care of whatever issues arise. But if there is a portion of it that still needs to be taken care of by the city, what is that dollar amount? What are those person hours? Who might be assigned to those tasks? I think that might be helpful because, in my eyes, and I think Jerry actually mentioned it already, I don't really see much of a maintenance increase with the acquisition of a property of this size.
Can I just quickly respond to that? Jennifer Budge, Parks and Recreation Director. We can definitely anticipate that. I think where the real expense will come is after the trailhead's constructed and built. So you build it, people will come, and then that's just when that activity, because people might just drive by it right now that aren't hiking, that aren't in that area. But we can definitely come up with some estimates. You want to have a regular presence with your park rangers. You want to have regular trash pickup. If you do have restrooms available, you want them clean, things of that nature. So it'll really be, I would anticipate, after that trailhead's constructed. And in between, it would be that natural resource management piece, the fuels, treatments, any weed issues, anything of that nature.
So perhaps we could come up with an analog then, something that we already own that has paved resources, a trailhead, something of that nature to compare costs with. That might provide an estimate.
Yeah, we can definitely provide those estimates, and then we can also reach out to the Carson City Fire Department on maybe looking at some joint management, for fuels and things of that nature as well.
I can provide one estimate, granted it's a few years old, but our other forested property at the top of Ash Canyon, 100 acres, so same size. Maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, we worked with the Nevada Division of Forestry on a forest health project because it was funded with not just because it was funded with the Forest Legacy Program. It's the right thing to do for stewardship of the land, but that program requires a stewardship plan. So working with NDF and with that stewardship plan, we did a forest health project, and we cut timber, we cut a fuel break, and just to give you an idea, that was $35,000. $10,000 came from our pockets and $25,000 from a grant with them.
Thank you, Ann. Other comments from the committee? The other alternative that comes to mind is that we turn over the trailhead to parks and call it no longer open space, but.
I can see that's going to fly.
I say that tongue in cheek. We're a long ways from those kinds of discussions. Any other comments by the committee, or do I?
I just have one, and I can certainly see your side. I know it's the farthest part from Carson City as you could possibly get towards Douglas County and try and maintain. So I have, some feeling for that. But the other side of the coin, I really think this is an integral part of this long-term trail thing. So that's all I have to say.
And I'm not opposed to it by any means. I just want to go in with our eyes open about what the good and the bad is, and what the challenges might be, and how can we all come together and work together through some of these challenges that present themselves. So I'm in full support of this. I mean, it has so much value, and it would be an amazing acquisition to have, but it is, a big chunk for us to take on.
Thank you. Donna?
Yeah, I think, it just made me think about, as we acquire these properties, and we've already heard that this is going to bring more economic development to Carson City, maybe we need to be more cognizant of that piece of it and get maybe some studies going. And I'm sure Visitors Bureau will be more than happy to help us with those studies, to take to the Board of Supervisors and say, hey, we're bringing in this money, we need more money to keep this level up so that we can continue to bring in more money.
And Ann and I have been writing notes back and forth and, trying to pursue maybe Commission on Tourism grants and reaching out to the Culture and Tourism Authority and some other partners that maybe we originally didn't think about, before starting this discussion tonight. So we can definitely look into all that.
Thank you. Are there any final public comments? We ready for a motion?
I'll make it.
Donna?
I recommend that to the Board of Supervisors regarding approval of a grant application for the Forest Legacy Program for fee title acquisition of approximately 100 acres located in the Clear Creek area and administered by the Nevada Division of State Lands.
Do we? We need to.
I'm sorry. Forest Legacy Program and any other potential funding sources.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. Okay. On the discussion, and in the interest of sending a message to state lands and the Board of Supervisors, further message, do we need to consider recommending money for an appraisal as a part of our action tonight?
I don't think you need to include it in your action. We do have budget, so if that's your direction, I can pursue that, and I will continue those conversations with Charlie Donahue to find out what the best process is with him to determine a value.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this based on just getting the grant?
To purchase the property, yes, but I think.
I mean, we're a long way from
Heather-
there. All we're doing is recommending that we go forward with trying to get the grant, correct?
Where I'll start is asking for a quote on what an appraisal will cost, and maybe Juan can even help with in his memory on those appraisal costs. That would be a great start to this, because then we have a better idea on what dollar value are we looking at for purchasing this property.
Okay, well, we have a motion and a second, and maybe with what you said, that should take care of things for right now. So with that, any final comments? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you all for, if any of you out there aren't part of Muscle Power, we're glad to have you with us, and thank you all for your inputs. Okay, moving along. Well, thank you for being a very public part of this. Okay, item 3D, to recommend to the Board of Supervisors regarding approval of a grant application to the Land and Water Conservation Fund for fee title acquisition of approximately 206 acres located in the Timberline and VC Canyon area, owned by Gerald and Luann Ham. Jeremy, I see your name here. Or do you want to start, or is Ann going to start?
Sure, I'll go. So this item was on the agenda it was December 19, 2016. So it's been a while, and this was right at there seems to be competing priorities between this property and the Clear Creek property, because in 2016, when this item came to the committee, our direction was that the priority was Clear Creek, and clearly that has come to fruition with all the support here. In 2016, during that meeting, I can take part of the blame for essentially letting the mustard slip off the hot dog on this one, because this is actually another very important integral piece to our trails network. And in my defense, the lack of homework that I did, I didn't see the overlay of our trails, our non-official trails overlaid on this property. What I saw was the VC Canyon Road and the cutback, which is the fire break. That's the map right there that shows our current trails that are not legal, but they are highly maintained, highly used. These trails are extremely important to me because this is right out my back door. These are the trails that I ride on a weekly basis. If we lose this property, we lose not only the connection to the college, to the lower Kings to Ash Trail, but we lose the connection to new trails that are being built right now. Secret Trail, another important piece that is being integrated into the Epic Rides ride. So this one, when I talked with Jeff about this property, it came up just a few weeks ago, actually, and through our conversation, it became, I was informed that this property has had a lowball offer. We don't know by who, for what purpose, if it's a developer or if it's private party. But if we lose this property, we lose these trails. And so, I mean, I understand right now the priorities between Clear Creek and potentially this property. There's some discussion to do. But from my perspective, this property right here is worth it because we would be gaining a piece of property that already has trails, highly maintained, and it already establishes the connection to already the trail network that's already in place.
Thank you, Jeremy. Ann, did you have anything to add?
I will go ahead and add to that. This item was added to the agenda fairly last minute, so the detail is not as great as it was for Clear Creek. Only today was Lindsay able to go visit the property with all the snow levels. Again, we did take that through the evaluation process. I only have a draft in my hand, so as we finish more detail, I can send that to the committee for your review. But going through the characteristics, the wildlife habitat corridors, without a doubt. Anyone who's been here long enough knows that is a mule deer migration area. Also, natural communities, there's a presence of mature canopy trees, shrubs, and healthy native grasses. So all of those score on the moderate and high end for property evaluation. Lindsay was also very pleased in seeing, this is where the botany nerds get excited, is when we start talking about grass. Perennial grasses, landscape. So there's bottle-brush squirrel tail, Great Basin wild rye, needle grass. So much on our landscapes anymore with the frequent fire cycles, we are losing needle grass on the landscape. So it's exciting that she saw that up there. Also, several different species of native forbs, including several buckwheat species and mule's ear. Greg also joined her today, and they were just amazed by the views, and I do have a few pictures that I can show up there. It is visible from major roads, local roads, adjacent residences. The size is 200 acres. So when we consider size, that is the high priority property. Accessibility. Similar to Clear Creek, if it was acquired, it could be open to the public right away. The limits to that accessibility, it is adjacent to other open space lands on the west side. The trails would be open. However, one of the questions in talking with the realtor, he couldn't necessarily tell me if there was legal vehicular access. But those who hike and bike don't necessarily, they're not necessarily asking for vehicular access. Cultural historic resources are unknown, but maybe improbable, just based on this location. It does contain high infiltration soils, but there are no flood hazards on this property. The ease of acquisition can be acquired with terms. Your packet does state what the current offer and acceptance was. I think initially it was listed over $600,000. The most recent buyer offer was $450,000. The seller is still willing to entertain that offer. I don't have even an estimate of what that value would be, though, tonight for you. There's likely significant participation from non-funding sources. We are here tonight to talk about the Land and Water Conservation Fund. Your packet does say the deadline was March 23rd. Just this afternoon, I received an email that deadline has been extended. So it's a little breath of relief that we don't need to hurry overnight and get the application in. The grant deadline has been extended to May 25th. Urgency is medium because it is on the market for sale. We did not check that development is imminent. Again, we don't know what the legal drive access is. And it is part of the open space plan. It's identified in a high priority area for hillside protection, and it is adjacent to other open space properties. And the last question on there is citizen support. So maybe I won't answer that question because I think others in the room can answer that for you. But on the criteria, it's all medium and high. Quickly, I'll just run through the pictures. Towards timberline and view towards ash. Tall, woolly buckwheat. That's one of the plants that Lindsay was excited about today. Lindsay, sorry, for those who don't know, Lindsay Boyer is our Senior Natural Resource Specialist. And then the panoramic views over Carson City. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ann. Has anyone from staff spoken to the sellers?
I have talked to the realtor.
You know, one of the things that in a private situation like this that sometimes can be a tool is a tax benefit for partial donation. And that might be something that could be utilized to provide the same net to the seller, but less cost to open space. Committee comments or questions? All right. Public comments, public input.
Frank Forsgren, private citizen. I moved to Nevada about 35 years ago and been in northern Nevada ever since, but I've been in Carson here about 15 years, and about 3 years ago I moved over to the west side to take advantage of those great trails over there. And so I think that this acquisition is very important. I attended the christening of the realignment down through the downtown corridor, and I heard the mayor talk about his vision of bringing in recreational events to take advantage of the open spaces we have here. And I think that that has been realized economically. And so that vision is really great. I love to see that vision of using our open spaces to promote economic development. So again, I'll urge the committee to move forward with recommending acquisition of this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Mark Kimbrough for the record. And I'm really jealous. You know, I sit on RTC and we never get this many people at a meeting. I think it's only the reporter in the room and somebody's relative that came to see him, I think. So this is really testament to trails in this community. This is like huge. You can't get this many people at roads, and that's what gets them to the trailhead. So let me I'm just going to give you some history because I've been involved with this from day one. My hero, Juan Guzman, I look back on my records in 2010, sat there and told me that I was working more for Juan than helping him out on trails then, that Muscle Powered had some interest in developing a trail map. So he sent me out on task with my GPS, and I went out and GPS these trails on that Sierra Front there, all that Ash Canyon area. And lo and behold, what did I find out? Most of them were on private property or on state lands who wanted to ignore the whole process or the idea that there's trails on their land, which has been a benefit of this because that has changed considerably since we first started this in 2010. So they're great trails, but that was the bad news. So I essentially, between Juan and I, we informed them, well, you can't put a public map out there for trails that are on private land. You just can't do that. And what I was impressed by with my years of experience on trails was how great these trails were built. I mean, they were very well built with people with a lot of experience building trails. So and those are called volunteer trails, and they appear all the time on this urban front. That zone along there that people build these trails, and so it's just really sad it turned out to be on private property. So that's what so after we found that out, Juan and I, and actually Roger was involved with us a little bit, was to bring me in, and Jeff Potter was in part of these discussions who's I thought he'd speak first, but he's right behind me here. That it's going to be a big volunteer project to do a trail plan for Carson City. So the idea is you can't come into the boards and the Board of Supervisors and Parks with little pieces. Let's put the whole plan together about the importance of this trail and how it all links to all these things that you're talking about tonight, all the way to Clear Creek and the King's Dash and all these different trails that are in place and what we want to see in the future. So we started the plan. So this piece of property was the catalyst. This was key that started this whole ball rolling because it was so integral to the trail systems up there. It'd be like somebody gave you a big jigsaw puzzle of Christmas and took about 40 of the pieces out and threw them off somewhere, and you know you can't finish the puzzle. Without this piece, you can't finish the puzzle. You really can't. And I was really upset, not at Jeremy, that I wasn't here at that meeting that night to defend it. I had no clue that I wasn't paying attention to the agendas at that point, that it got bumped out because it was so integral and important. It plays a role with the state lands and all the connections above, and the trail system is so good. So that catalyst actually started the ball rolling with myself helping more volunteer than by pay by a long means to form the Eagle Valley Trails Committee. So that piece of property and those evaluations what started that ball rolling in 2013, which is now 2018, and we're on the agenda Thursday night for the Planning Commission to move that approval that you guys have already approved for that plan. So starting in 2010, just like we're learning with trails, there's a whole lot of boundaries and private issues and all these issues that come along with trails that can hold them up for years. The Rim Trail was held up for 9 years for the last piece that was done over the wilderness issues, but just shows it can take years. And so this piece is really integral to all those things that we're working on. So the only other point I'm going to make after that, well, one other point is I was also one of the founders of a group called the Sierra Front Recreation Coalition, which were all of the leadership role people, the head of Washoe County, the head of Carson City, the head of the Forest Service here in the Carson Ranger District, the head of BLM. And one of the most critical points the Forest Service was dealing with is they wanted to make sure, which Carson Valley Trails Association has been very active in, getting access to the Sierras, because nobody knows it in this state that has all this public land. Almost that whole Sierra front's locked in by private land. So it's a real high priority for the Forest Service to get these lands, and that's one of the reasons behind the plan, is to make sure we don't get locked out. And getting the Planning Commission, which is really great with Soft Trails, not locking us out of these these developments that come to the base of the Sierras here. So I want to point out that I know that money is always the key to what's going on here, and priorities are set, and Clear Creek's a really competitive one with this. But I'd like to say that I would hope to match the money. If people say, you know, how do you justify spending that money for those properties? Muscle Powered has had thousands of dollars of work that's put into the community for free for years. The Eagle Valley Trail Committee put a plan together over 5 years that was for free. There's all these things they've done for free. To me, this asking for this amount of money to pay with the Ham family, who are willing to take a bit of a hit, I think this community has paid that already. So I think the open space kind of had some responsibility to come back to Muscle Power because of this room being full tonight saying, you guys have given all of this, and it's time for us to open our checkbook to kind of help balance that out a little bit for the community support. And the ham property pays heavy in that. So the only thing I have left to say is I really wish I had something cute to say, like we got something in Carson City, but I don't have that tonight. So I thought that was great, actually. So I thank you for the time, and I hope you think seriously about how to get this in and figure out the funding. And you've had Nevada Land Trust here, and they're good facilitators for purchases too. So. And Jeremy, your humble pie, I accept your apology for this. Thank you for putting it on the agenda.
Hey, thanks, Mark. It was right next to Christmas. I think we were thinking too much about Christmas cake. That's pretty much. I wanted to just say thank you very much, and I support 100% what he just said in that frame of supporting the community for all the free work that has already been put into the community. I've actually never thought about it in that way, and it just struck me of how completely accurate and true that statement was.
Mark, thank you. And thank you for your work on behalf of Eagle Valley Trails Committee. Jeff, how are you?
Thanks. Hello, my name is Jeff Potter. I represent Eagle Valley Trails Committee and Muscle Powered. First, I want to first say hello to Mr. Chair and the committee. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I want to thank Jennifer and you, Bruce, and Ann for getting this on the agenda, and thank you, Jeremy, for requesting it to be put on the agenda. I know it was short notice, and I apologize. Same thing was happening with me. I knew it was on the agenda when it last was up here, but I was at work 14-hour days, couldn't make it, unfortunately, and it went another direction. What I'd like to say is how important these trails are, and why, if you could bring it to the land ownership map. The land ownership map, please, with the trails. Yeah, that one's perfect. Sorry. I guess the one I can understand. So this did, the Eagle Valley Trail Committee did start because of, the trails on the Ash Canyon side. And through the process of the Eagle Valley Trails Committee, we did public meetings, and actually in this room. And we had some also online surveys. And even with the Clear Creek Trailhead, both that property and this property ranked high with the public for acquisition, and mainly for the EVTC stuff and the surveys. We didn't specifically say, hey, ham property. It was mostly, we want access to the public, to the lands behind the college, which we'll refer to as Ash Canyon Trails. And if you can see the ham property, we've got 5 trails that at least touch it, with one almost entirely on the ham property. And why that part is so critical is, before we can get access to those trails, or actually ask the landowners around those trails if we can access their land or get easements, is we need to know what's going to happen with the ham property. If you can see where WNC is, we have a trail going up, and then we lead into the school trust lands, and then those lead into the ham property, which then also lead into the Masonic Lodge property, which eventually ends up at the Ash Canyon, Ash to Kings Trail. So we, the WNC is open to public access on their land. They were actually at the last joint Park and Rec Open Space Committee meeting and stated that. State Lands is open for discussion, but they'd like a package presented to them from us on what we would like. And we're going to meet with the Masonic Lodge in a couple weeks to discuss public access on their land. So the surrounding landowners are open for discussions on public access, but we just don't know what's going to happen with the ham property, which, when we found out a couple weeks ago that they would like to sell and they weren't happy with the lowball offer, we thought we'd take that opportunity to try and get access and or pursue acquisition of that through the Open Space and the Land and Water Conservation Fund. So if this was purchased, we also have a chance to build another stacked loop, maybe 2, on top of the trails that exist, but it's also a critical link from Ash Canyon to, as Jeremy mentioned, Secret Trail, but I'll just refer to it as Hobart Road. Because on the Unified Pathways Master Plan, there is a desire line connecting the canyons. And because of topography, the best access to make that connection is through the Ham property. Otherwise, we're kind of topographically isolated with a very narrow corridor that isn't desirable to build trail on. So that is a critical piece for that connection. And last, before I end this, I would like to see a show of hands of the people that are in the audience that are here for the support of that acquisition. Okay. Okay. Good. So thank you, and that's all I have, except if you have questions.
Thank you, Jeff.
I got you.
Oh, dude, thanks.
Hello, my name's Nathan Harrison, and I'm a citizen here in town, and I just want to voice my support for this, to move forward with the land application grant. A little bit about myself. I've been here for 20 years, have a wife and 2 kids. They're high school and middle school age. My wife and I are 2 of the coaches on the high school mountain bike team, and so we're actively working with the kids to get them out in the open space during the summer months and the fall months, riding with them up to 3 days a week. Even without the kids, my family is involved in getting out there on the trails, sometimes 5 or 6 days a week. So we're definitely users of this particular trail network. I guess you know that everybody supports in the audience supports the acquisition, but I just want to kind of paint the picture of what would happen if we were to lose the access to those trails. Jeff highlighted the fact that there's 5 trails that are currently going over that piece of property. That's basically like taking the middle section out of a highway or a neighborhood. I mean, you may be able to get in partway, but at what point do you turn around and not have access to the remainder of those trails and not be able to get to anything that is further up in the Ash Canyon area? So I guess I'm just wanting to put it out there that if the Carson City, the folks of Carson City were to lose access, it would be in my mind, a terrible thing for the community. On any day that you go out there when it's warm or in the fall, the amount of people that you see using those trails, there's hikers, there's a lot of mountain bikers. Go on night rides, you see a lot of wild animals, deer up there, coyotes, there's eagles that nest near there. I mean, it's just a really, really cool area. The views are great, but I mean, it's really a really integral part of the outdoor community in Carson City. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thank you very much. 2 minutes, Juan.
Mr. Chairman, I am still Juan Guzman and hasn't changed. I wanted to mention that, reiterate what Ann alluded to, that this property has values in addition to the trails, because you have heard so much about the trails. But in addition to that, the vistas are just incredible from the side. And when you look from town up, it's very nice to see the space open as well. It also has water, has partially the creek runs through it. So that's amazing. Every time that you have the ability to buy something with water, you are a step ahead of the game in Nevada. And Jenny, just for your comfort, they just did a fuel reduction program on the property not too long ago. So you don't have to worry about that for at least 5 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Juan. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee. Brian McRae, citizen of Carson City, Nevada, great state of Nevada. I wanted to share with you, I've been riding this area since any of these trails were even there. Back when I first came to Carson City in 1995. And it's just always been a place that I've always come back to home. But one thing I want to express is over the last 20 years that I've been in Carson City, I've done a lot of mountain biking specific trips to other places within the United States. Big names, Moab, Sedona, Bellingham, coastal California. And to a T, what you experience when you go to those towns is a great biking community. You'll stay in a hotel, and then every morning when you get up, you pack up all your things and you drive to a trailhead that's usually miles outside of town. Towns like Prescott and Grand Junction are a little bit closer to their trailheads, and lo and behold, that's why Epic Rides has chosen those as cities, because you can start downtown and ride from downtown. You can ride from your hotel, you can ride from your friend's house that you're staying at, and that is truly a unique thing that Carson City has that really few other places that consider themselves meccas of mountain biking can really tout. And to lose that, one of the things I really wanted to say on this was this trail system here does not need a trailhead to drive through, because Carson City is the trailhead. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Just following up on something that Juan said, when we first started in open space, we did quite a public outreach to determine what was important. And the highest priority areas were along the Carson River. And the second highest priority areas were the visual corridor areas that would affect, if developed, the view from Carson City. And so this happens to fall into that. We've heard an awful lot about trails and the value for trails, but as Juan pointed out, it has significant merits just on its own from the standpoint of where it lays and the visibility that it both offers and potentially would impact if it were developed. So, any other public comments? Yes.
My name's Bill Prowse. I live in Timberline, and I haven't heard anybody calling from there. I love the trails, and it's a real asset to our neighborhood. Over the 15 years I've lived there, I've seen the use of the trails, all the trails in that immediate area, Ash Canyon, Vicey Canyon, have increased steadily, and Jeff's maintenance has kept up, and it's a marvelous place, as my predecessor here had indicated. I've lived in a lot of places. None has this ambiance, if you will. And so please support the acquisition of that property. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? Yes, Ann.
I just want to make sure I have a minute before we lose everyone here. A couple items that have been discussed is the economic value and the volunteers and the trail maintenance. And through many people here, they have actually put their muscle on the trail with maintenance. And when Jeff and Ollie and any of the crew leaders are out there, they have the volunteers sign their worksheets. Jeff does pass that on to us. And so in our annual work plan, we did record that for the committee, and this is ultimately going to the board. From April to December last year, volunteers recorded 1,805 hours at a dollar value of over $43,000. And thank you.
Thank you, Ann. That puts it into perspective in terms of how much effort on a sustained basis is being made. Any other comments? Committee? Yes.
My name is Lee Harder. I'm a member of Muscle Powered. I just want to know if it might be appropriate to amend the item so that you apply not only to land and water conservation fund, but other appropriate agencies to get funding for it, just like you did on the Clear Creek item.
Thank you. A good point. Any other public comment? Any comments further from the committee? Okay. Do we have a motion for any action?
I move that we pursue the approval of the Board of Supervisors to find funding and look into what we can do to acquire this property.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, on the discussion, maybe we should make sure that Margie's motion covers what is needed. Ann, or do you have any? It's a motion to move forward, if I understood correctly.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. If that works for the DA, it also works for me.
Does that seem okay, Dan?
You know, I would say that motion's a slight deviation from what's agendized, but I think that overall, generally speaking, we're close enough. I'm comfortable with that motion, and if you want to accept a second on it, I'm okay with that as well.
Okay, we'll accept a second. I would like to clarify the one item then. Margie, your intention is that any and all sources of grant funds be pursued as part of this process?
My intention is that we request the Board of Supervisors to approve the seeking of funds through any means that's available by grant.
Okay. Jeremy, is that okay with you? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any public comment?
Yes.
Jeremy.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeremy second. Okay. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you. Thank you all. All right, committee, how are we doing? Do we want to continue? Do you want to take a break?
I can take a 5-minute break.
Okay, we will come back at 9 minutes to 8 o'clock. here. Our next item is item 3E. Possible action to recommend to the Board of Supervisors an official property name for an open space acquisition located in the Kings Canyon area and purchased from Mr. Michael Fagan. Ann?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We manage about 20 to 25 properties. Only about half have official property names, so we're continuing this process to have names so we can develop maps, have the monument signs, and have our properties identified on the landscaping and get our residents to recognize the impacts that we're having here. And so I am excited to bring these next two properties to the committee. I apologize that some of you were not able to make it out on field visits. We just, I guess, waited too long and we got snowed out. But Jeremy, Joanne, and Alan made it out. Bruce has also been out there, but it's been a number of years, and I know that because I have pictures. And so the two properties that we're looking at tonight are in the Kings Canyon area. The first property was known as the Horse Creek fee title acquisition. Horse Creek was actually two acquisitions. One was the fee title, which is the property above Kings Canyon Road, and then we have the Horse Creek Conservation Easement on 175 acres below the road. And so we did issue a press release into the Nevada Appeal and Carson Now. We received a couple of nominations. And also in your packet is the resolution that establishes the policies and procedures for the naming of open space properties, with the idea that open space properties are named for something unique to the area that it's located, some sort of special feature. Then I have several maps and then the applications. And the applications, I hope, will help you through the discussion and decision process and what folks had in mind when they submitted these. So we have 6 names for you to consider. The first is Del Sol, and I really like the thoughts that went into this nomination, which is translated to of the sun in Spanish, and how it swallows up all the rays of the sun in its valley and glows across that hillside. The second is the Juan F. Guzman Open Space. That is a nomination from Roger Mollendorf. Juan did stay with us for the meeting, but he also did send me an email last Friday. I'll read it because it does have gratitude for the committee and to the Board of Supervisors. Juan says, please accept this brief note to convey to you, the Open Space Advisory Committee, and the Board of Supervisors how honored and grateful I am for Roger Mollendorf, our former Parks Director's nomination of my name as candidate for the official naming of Horse Creek Ranch. As much as I appreciate Roger's action, I will ask you to withdraw my name from consideration and instead consider using a geographical descriptive name as provided in the naming resolution adopted by OSAC and the board. Working with so many individual property owners, government organizations, and nonprofits on the acquisition of open space for Carson City was an amazing endeavor that provided me with immense sense of satisfaction and accomplishment, and that itself was a great reward. So Juan declines the nomination. The third is the Washishu Open Space. Washishu is the phonetic spelling for the Washoe tribe, the Native American tribe in the area. And then the next 3 represent historic significance to the road. There's the Carson Immigrant Open Space, Kings Canyon Open Space, and Lincoln Highway. Those did come from staff. And through the time period of the development of Kings Canyon Road, that road was referred to by each of those names at different times. And actually, there were about 5 periods in the whole history of Kings Canyon, and even the gentleman king that it was named after. Kings Canyon. So Carson Immigrant, historically, the road itself was called the Carson Immigrant Ridge Road. As in the mid-1800s, as the travelers were traveling back and forth to California during the gold rush. And then Kings Canyon just after that, and then the Lincoln Highway, the old Lincoln Highway. What's amazing too, looking, we referenced a historic report, trying to brainstorm for ideas, and it's so exciting to think about interpretive opportunities on some of the old pictures and the old Ford vehicles and Swift Station and so many things up in that area. That's all I have, Mr. Chair, and I'm ready for any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you, Ann. If we named it Juan Guzman, they'd think you were dead, Juan. Okay, let's talk among the committee. Any inputs, thoughts, ideas from committee members? Yes, Donna.
I do have one question. Why not keeping Horse Creek? I mean, that's kind of a nice name, but...
Well, you do have that option. There's actually nothing necessarily historic. I did talk with Michael Fagan to try to get some history from him and his knowledge on that, and he said, well, he doesn't really know. That's what the realtor told him when he bought the property. But there's no reference in the historic documents to Horse Creek Ranch.
When the road was first built, wasn't it Bigler Toll Road originally?
Jeremy, do you remember?
I understood it, I've always understood that it was Bigler Toll Road originally, because Bigler built that road.
That doesn't sound familiar, but
Okay. Because it was originally a toll road, that I'm sure of. So anyway, I just was wondering about those two things. I can tell you, for me, I prefer the Washi Shoe, which may be a problem. People won't be able to pronounce it. But.
Thank you, Donna. Bigler had a lake named after him. Other comments from the committee? Questions? Margie?
There's a couple of names that I'm partial to. As I mentioned earlier, I worked for the Clear Creek Watershed Council for years, and it was always really, really interesting to me how much the Washoe people specifically cared about the headlands of Clear Creek, the headwaters of Clear Creek, and that area. So on the one side, it seems like it would be very, very fitting to honor them with naming that property. The other one that I really like is a little bit of a variation on the Lincoln Highway open space. I think it would be thinking about the Lincoln Highway and the opportunities for interpretive adventures. I'd like to call it the historic Lincoln Highway open space. That's the historic Lincoln Highway open space or Washishu open space.
Okay. Other comments from committee members?
Yeah.
Alan?
I'm a little bit nervous about the Washishu just from the standpoint that we haven't talked to the tribe.
Yes.
We have? And have they looked at all our open space properties that don't have a name and they have a preference or not?
I talked with Daryl Cruz, who is, I apologize, I don't know his exact title, but Chief Environmental
he's
Specialist,
the
maybe.
Tribal Historic Preservation Office, TIPO.
And I ran the nominations of this property and the next one past him, and there is no opposition to Washishu, but I did not talk about all of our properties.
I guess that's partly where I'm coming from. I would think it might be appropriate that we told them which properties we have, and is there one that's particularly of interest to them rather than us just making that decision.
When these nomination forms were released, I sent one to Daryl and someone else who I'm not remembering. I think it would be important. I like the idea of Washishu as well. But I think it would be important to get their input before we just vote on it. You know what? I think that it would be appropriate to get their input before, all of us who are not Washoe make that decision.
Can we tell them that we're considering that name for this property? And that's what we would like to do, as opposed to saying, do you want to pick a single property out of all the ones we have left? But just let them know that we would like to name this property that.
I'll look to our DA, possibly, and the recommended action, maybe you can have a first priority and second priority. And if Washoe is your first, I can talk with the tribe, not just talk about this property again, but maybe the entire map and get their feeling for that.
Is there a time limit on this, naming this property?
No
Then
time
why don't we
limit.
just table it until you talk to them?
I can do that.
Okay, let me call for public comment. Any thoughts, ideas? Members of the public? Okay, seeing none.
The party moved down the hall.
Yeah, it looks that way. Okay, I'm hearing that there's at least an interest here in tabling this for further background to bring back to our next meeting. Is that comfortable? Okay. I guess we should have a motion and a second to that effect.
I move that we table this item for further discussion with the Washoe tribe and bring it up at our next meeting or a subsequent meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any public comment? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll see that one next time. Alan second, yes. Okay, item 3F. Possible action to recommend to the Board of Supervisors an official property name for an open space acquisition located in the Kings Canyon area and purchased from the Hutchinson family in 2006. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Similarly, this property is located up in Kings Canyon. There's 5 names on the list for your consideration. Possibly one to be removed would be the second name on that list, Kanei Open Space. As the nomination describes, it is a Paiute name for red-tailed hawk. Similar to the previous nomination, I did run this past Dale Cruz and the tribe. He did express that if there were any Native American names used in Carson City, that it should reflect the local tribe. And so he did propose Wawi, which is Washoe for hawk, not necessarily red tail. They do just have one name that they use for red tail, golden, and other species of hawks. That is spelled W-A space W-E-E, and it's a phonetic spelling from the Washoe because their language has a lot of different ticks and such, but that's the phonetic spelling, Wawi. And then the other 3 names provided, Kings View, Valley View, and Vista Grande. The views up there from the viewpoints, you can look down onto Washoe Valley, Eagle Valley, Carson Valley, and just the pine nuts, and I far. It's just spectacular. Any comments or questions?
Thanks, Ann. Comments or questions from the committee? Margie.
For some reason, I missed the notice that there was a naming about to happen. So I would like to throw out another name for consideration, because a lot of this looks out over Eagle Valley and Carson Valley. I think it would be fun to say something to call it something that gives that a nod. Since we're looking out over Eagle Valley, how about Eagles Vista? Or Eagles Vista Open Space. Just throwing it out there.
When we visited the site, the top of the property where you can actually see Frog Rock, you can see all three valleys, which is why I like the last two, Valley View open space or Vista Grande open space. But I actually do like your idea. Maybe it could be Tri-Valley open space, something to, lend credence to the actual valleys that we're looking at. So.
When I saw these, my reaction was, how about valley views as plural, open space?
Or valleys. Valley plural.
Yeah. Alan?
When I started thinking about Valley View, we have a street named Valley View.
That's what
And so that was part of my concern, that we don't have that confusion. I mean, I really like the idea of like Tri-Valley View or something to make that, but Valley View itself, since I don't like having two place names the same.
Donna?
To be honest with you, I don't like the Valley Views or the Vista Grandes, because every community in this country has one of those names. I actually really like the Wawi, the Eagles. Would the tribe be able to give us the name of Eagles View?
I can ask, yes.
I think, because that would cover all the valleys that an eagle would see from there. I don't know. That's just my.
Other thoughts? Jeremy?
From my perspective, I guess, wearing the cultural resources hat, these types of places on the landscape actually were hotspots for archaeological site locations. There may not be a representation on the surface, but places that provide vantage points were extremely important. So offering a name for the Washoe that the Washoe approve, of course, would also be very cool from my perspective.
Help me understand, what kind of name might fit that?
I guess I'm neutral on Wawi, but if there were other suggestions that Daryl and his group could offer, I guess Wawi is for hawk. If there was one for eagle, that might be cool.
It's a pretty simple process, isn't it? Is there any public comment? All right, back to the committee. What kind of an action do we want to take, or do we want to take any?
May we table this one as well until the next meeting? And then I won't be at the April meeting, so you'll have one less person to throw their thoughts in.
Well, and I think once if we get direction or some guidance from the tribe, that will help, because that'll help some of us who are on the fence. Donna and myself seems like we're leaning towards, let's make this let's give this something to the Washoe that would be important for open space. Once we get some level of direction, I think that might help.
When we name these properties, we're naming them for a very long time. So I just would really like us to have all the best options we can come up with when we do it.
Okay. Do I have a motion, or is there further discussion?
I move that we table this for further input from the tribe to the next meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay.
Third.
Is there any public comment? Any further discussion from the committee? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next item, 3H. Recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the fiscal 2018-2019 budget for the Quality of Life Open Space account. Ann?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We just received the budget last week, so I apologize that I've not had a chance to review that and provide updated numbers. But we can assume it has increased since last year. Last year's budget was a little over $1 million. The table in front of you is how that was dispersed through the various accounts that we have. I only highlighted for items that are different or perhaps increases that what you have seen in the past. So I have proposed a pay raise for our, small pay raise for our Silver Saddle Ranch caretaker. Under professional services, I increased that dollar amount from $190,000 last year to $250,000. Just thinking ahead, update our master plan and various other items that we just need to work on. Employee physicals, that's actually a new item for us that I learned about this last year. As we increase the number of employees, there is a city policy that if we are in a vehicle accident, that we are drug tested. And so now we need a budget to cover that. And unfortunately, there were a couple accidents last year. One was meeting up with the deer on Kings Canyon Road, an unfortunate accident there. And then the fourth highlight is machinery and equipment. I am asking for $36,000 to purchase a new truck and an additional truck. It's not a replacement, but as we hired or getting ready to hire our first full-time maintenance coordinator and having seasonals, we just have a need for more field vehicles. So that would be a total of 4 vehicles for the open space program. Those are the major changes. And then you can also see, since it has been an item of discussion through the evening, last year we had a budget of a little more than $1.3 million in land acquisition. I only penciled in $1 million, but whatever we have left, since there are a number of acquisitions on our plate, I can go ahead and add whatever remaining funds into that line item if that's your direction.
Thank you, Ann. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead, Jared.
What are the numbers that current balance as of 2/8/18? What do those represent? Money that you haven't spent yet?
Correct, yes.
Why?
For the salaries, we had budgeted the full fiscal year for a full-time maintenance worker, and unfortunately, we don't have that position hired on. In our last meeting, I think we did announce that the position was hired, and unfortunately, it did not work out, and so we have the job announcement posted again right now.
What about the vehicles and, other stuff that you've got here? I mean, if you needed vehicles, why didn't you get them?
And it is a discussion that we just had because it takes actually a pretty long process to get vehicles. Yeah. And so, yeah, we have talked about, from this fiscal year, can I just take money from another account so I can go ahead and buy a vehicle right now for the summer? Mm-hmm. So if I move that money in this fiscal year, then you'll see a zero amount for next year.
That current balance represents basically 8 months out of a 12-month budget year, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. Other comments or questions? Any public comment? I'm sorry.
I have a question. It seems like over and over again we talk about how we have more land than we have resources to manage, that's a big concern. And then I look at the budget, and the amount of money that is spent on hourly employees and even the salaried employees is minuscule compared to what we have in acquisition. It's like, why can't we get more staff? I mean, it's probably a more detailed, seems simple to me, and I'm sure it's not, but why don't we have another staff position instead of 1.3 million in acquisition, and everyone's concerned we don't need any more land?
So if we were going to increase our FTEs or full-time equivalent staff, we would need approval of the Board of Supervisors. So if you think that is some direction that we should take, now is the time to talk about it, and we can bring that forward to the budget process. So last year, we went and requested the open space maintenance coordinator, and they were very supportive of adding that position because they recognize what we're doing. I will say the board is very cautious about adding new staff citywide because they continually cost more. And it's not the salaries, it's the benefit package, because it never goes down, it always goes up. So when we bring on any new staff person in whatever capacity, whether it's for us, the sheriff's office, the fire department, wherever, that's continually costing more money for the taxpayers. So it's something that they're very hesitant about, but they recognize it. And our need for more help. Another thing we can do is we can look at hiring things like conservation corps and Great Basin Institute for, projects and finite problems, so you're not committed to a long-term commitment for things like that. Also, seasonal help as well is really great. We've had a really hard time getting good quality seasonal help because of the amount of money that we typically pay. So I just want to preface that. We had a really hard time last summer throughout the entire department from seasonals.
Not only you, it's everybody.
It is everyone. And our rates for hourly pay are grossly below, what most people are in the region. So when you can go to In-N-Out Burger and make $18 an hour, or Starbucks, we're not competing necessarily with Reno, Sparks, Washoe, the traditional groups that we were normally competing with. We're competing with private industry that has more opportunity for youth employment. So that is a challenge for us. But we do also have access to inmates, which is great. We pay $1.50 an hour per inmate, but what comes with that are some significant challenges as well, and the risk to our staff. It's not something I'm a fan of, but it is a great way to get additional labor force when we need it.
I've got a question about, the money comes in from the proposition or the question that was passed by the voters, correct? And do we have a number that is, what number is that? Generally, just ballpark, what kind of number is it?
Of the entire tax, open space receives 40% of that, and last year it was just a little over $1 million.
So that's what came in to the front door.
Yes.
Is there some guidelines on how it's allocated, or is that up to us? I mean, does so much of it have to be put aside for acquisition, or can it be used for whatever reasons we believe?
The guidelines would be in Carson City Municipal Code 13.06, which is open space, but it's pretty much what we've been talking about tonight and the work plan within the categories. To some extent, that is within your flexibility. Where it's not, I've tried to make those notes. Yes.
So there's not a certain percentage that needs to be spent on the acquisition part?
Correct.
It's just, okay, thank you.
You'll see certain items, you'll see like ISC general fund cannot be adjusted by the committee. Those are the items where you can't really, there isn't flexibility. You'll see a few items that Ann's noted cannot be adjusted by the committee. So those are finite, but the other areas, there is opportunity.
Addressing a couple of the points that have been made here, historically, we've been pretty conservative about adding staff, particularly full-time staff. We have had a couple of occasions and support when we went to the Board of Supervisors to add people. They're pretty conservative about adding people to the city budget at all. But we've done things with part-time positions. Greg Berggren, for example, our trails coordinator. There's a Jim, he's retired, he's just enthusiastic. He gets paid a little bit for what he loves, but not nearly what he puts in. Seasonals are can be a big help because they don't have the benefit package, but they can accomplish a lot. Are we limited on what we can pay seasonals? Is that set beyond our capability to recommend changes? To me, seasonals are so valuable for us. Paying a little bit more because it's a seasonal without a benefit package could be really maybe effective.
We do have flexibility with that. We just have to be really careful what we call that person because we don't want to create other challenges for the rest of the department where that we might not be able to, out of those budgets, be able to pay the same amount. So we just have to be really careful about how we do that, but we do have that flexibility.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for staff?
I do. Well, I like the idea of increasing the hourly staff, but is that what you need? I know that, when you mentioned before that maintenance is an issue, and you talked about just kind of maintaining a presence at sites or cleaning the bathrooms or picking up trash. To me, a lot of that could be done by hourly staff. Is that really where we need it, or is it, or when you talk about having more work on your plate than you guys can handle, is that a full-time position that you really need, or both?
I think that's a great question that I haven't sat down to really think and put pen to paper to think what would the ideal scenario be. You can add that to my list for the next meeting too.
I think to answer that, it's probably a combination of all of the above, to be honest. And but I think you'll see we've added an intern there, and that's for a Great Basin Institute intern. They come with a truck. They're trained. They're not your standard intern that comes in fresh, not knowing anything. They really have some skill and some experience because of where they come from. So I think increasing that opportunity, also hiring these conservation crews and those where we could hire them for 1 or 2 or 3 weeks to do specific project areas that we just can't get to and we don't have the labor force to do. Maybe it's installing signs for our site plan, or maybe it's doing some natural resource management and dealing with weeds, or things like that, where we could really get out a lot of projects in a short amount of time. We'd probably get the most out of that kind of effort for the lowest amount of money. Biggest bang for our buck, I guess, is what I'm saying. So that would probably be not a bad idea.
Why only one intern? Can we get more?
Sure. Yeah.
When we have our park maintenance coordinator in place, we'll be able to better manage those kinds of things as well. So.
And just having one new full-time position will make a big difference for us too, because Lindsay's been managing that among her duties.
Yeah, and that frees up professional staff for grant writing and other things that are a whole lot more potentially valuable in the big picture. Margie.
I just want to say that if we keep adding, if we add all of these different staff members, we're also talking about Ann and Jen and having to spend more time supervising staff members, training staff members. So it goes 2 ways. One position I was trying to think about was the potential of having a seasonal park ranger to assist John, but you're talking about having 6,000 acres of property in open space. Why do we have only one ranger dedicated to open space?
So we are going to be requesting in the next budget year a seasonal park ranger, maybe a park aide, whatever title we decide to have with that. We found some money in the parks budget to be able to pay for that. So we don't need to ask for that out of the open space budget, which will be great. But it'll be additional help for open space, additional bodies, more boots on the ground, and trying to help cover. So it'll be April-ish through October-ish, depending on what we can get.
That's great. It's good to hear, Jen. Thank you.
So in addition to identifying even what the future need is, I'll also bring the organizational chart in respect to that question about adding impacts to myself and Lindsay. To myself, not directly, no, they would ultimately be under me as the open space administrator, but as a parks maintenance worker, those seasonal positions would be under the maintenance coordinator. And then the interns would probably be under Lindsay, and Lindsay also supervises the coordinator. So I have 3, she has 2.
Other comments or questions?
I would like
Jerry.
to know, if we go ahead and move to approve this budget, what flexibility is there, or do we have any after it's approved, to move money from one section to another, that other than the ones we cannot move?
At what time? Anytime throughout the year, or, okay, I guess I'm trying to
If we
understand.
decide that we need to hire more staff or get another vehicle or whatever the thing is there a way of, or are we stuck with these numbers?
There is a way, we can definitely, I
Okay,
can go to.
I was just curious.
We have the ability to go to the internal finance committee and get things moved around if we need to do that. That's not a problem, as long as it's not too significant and doesn't need to go to the Board of Supervisors, we have that option.
Yeah, full-time city position is probably a hurdle, but other things are, I think,
So we
doable.
just massage the numbers
Yeah.
and move them on.
The vehicle example is a great one. If we have the money right now, which we do, we could go and get it, and then we would just take that out of the budget for next year. It wouldn't be a problem. We could definitely do that.
I just had a quick comment about the vehicles. Did you say, Ann, that you're looking for a new vehicle and another vehicle on top of that?
No, just one vehicle, which would be an addition to our fleet, but it's not replacing any of the other 3
Okay,
that we
all
are.
right, that, because I was going to say 36,000's, kind of going to cover a new truck.
First.
So that's based on a quote from our fleet manager, so it's a pretty good number.
They get better deals than we do. And they don't have all the bells and whistles. But any other comments or questions from the committee? Do we have a motion?
I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors approval of the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget for the Quality of Life Open Space account.
I'll
We have a
second it.
motion. We have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Donna. Any further discussion?
Did you ask for a public comment?
I'm just about to. Any public comment? Thank you. All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. And the hour's getting late. Let's go through these. We do have on staff updates, which we're not quite to yet, some discussion-only items, and I would ask the committee members if you have comments or questions to be thinking about them. But let's go to 3I. Approve the annual report for calendar year 2017 regarding activities of the Open Space Advisory Committee and submittal to the Board of Supervisors. Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is in your packet because Section 13.06.090 of the Carson City Municipal Code suggests that the committee shall provide an annual report to the Board of Supervisors, and most of the items in this report are not new to you. When we write the updates every month to you, it helps us at this time of year to do a copy-paste. So at this point, this is our chance to share with the Board of Supervisors what we have been working on throughout the last year. Just the only 2 things I'll highlight in this report for you is page 2, which is a summary of all the grants. That was a special request a couple years ago from Member Fitzsimmons that let's highlight the money that we're also bringing into the city. And then on page 3, I wanted to provide the kudos and the dollar value to the volunteer projects around Carson City. But otherwise, you have seen most of this throughout the year. Are there any comments or questions?
Donna.
I have 2. One, I would like to see Muscle Powered's trash mobs included in that volunteer. And Randy could give you the hours for that from last year if you need it. And the other thing is, I don't remember what page it's on, but one page somewhere mentioned Bay Scout instead of Boy Scout.
Okay, other comments, questions? Having presented this in the past to the Board of Supervisors and having been in front of them on other open space items, I would, I guess, remind us that they really appreciate what the Open Space Committee is trying to do, and they've been very, very supportive of our activities. And I think this gives a nice, well-rounded, comprehensive summary, and I think they will really appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, this is an action item. Do we have a motion?
Oh, I'll do it. No, you want to do it?
I'll do it. I move to approve the annual report for calendar year 2017 regarding the activities of the Open Space Advisory Committee and submittal to the Board of Supervisors with the minor edits noted.
A second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Is there any public comment? Any further committee comment? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. Item 3J, possible action. To approve the annual monitoring report for the Horse Creek Ranch Conservation Easement for 2017. Ann?
This item is another repeat item for the committee, just to allow you to know what has been happening on the Horse Creek property, making sure it remains consistent with the terms of the conservation easement that we have been up there visiting, and just noting a few items that we still need to work on with Michael Fagan. Any questions or comments?
Thank you, Ann. I did have one comment. The distribution box that needs to be replaced or repaired, whose responsibility is that? Is that?
Well, that's an interesting question. We'll make sure that we have an agreement next year. Mr. Fagan has said that it doesn't need to be replaced or repaired, that it's more for stability in that area. So we need to come to an agreement, maybe with the help of NRCS, because they've helped with other resource projects in the meadow.
That'd be great, and I'd love to see some progress, even if it's slow, on some of those head cuts.
Everything. It seems to me that everything's getting better except those 3 areas, those head cut areas.
And a bunch of the weeds have been removed.
Okay, other comments? Any public comment? All right, do we have a motion?
I move to approve the annual monitoring report for the Horse Creek Ranch Conservation Easement for 2017.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any public comment on the motion? Committee comments? All right, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion passes. We have several staff updates. Jennifer, do you want to go through 4A with us briefly? Or any highlights we need to?
Sure, just really quick, as Ann mentioned, Ash Canyon Road should be done by April or May at the latest. May is our deadline for FEMA, so we do have to have everything completed by mid-May. Centennial Park and the Empire Ranch Trails, playgrounds, and Morgan Mill should be out to bid anytime soon. Those bid packages are being put together right now, and then Riverview Park trails are complete. So the staff has been working really hard on getting those done. Any questions?
A lot of catch-up. Thank you.
How much was the road repairs for Ash Canyon? Is FEMA covering all of it, or did we have to provide a match?
For all of the FEMA projects, it's 75% provided by FEMA, 25% by the local government.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on 4A? 4B, open space properties, activities, projects, and grants. Ann, anything to add to what we have already?
No, Mr. Chair.
Committee questions or comments? Public comments? All right, moving ahead. 4C, activities, projects, and grants throughout the other areas managed by open space. Anything to add there, Ann? You have a staff report on that item.
I don't have any additional information, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any committee comments? Public comments? All right. 4D, activities related to trail projects managed by open space. We have a report there from Greg Berggren, who obviously did not outlast us tonight. He has done a great job, and we really appreciate what he's doing. Any comments or questions from the committee on that one? Public comments? All right. Item 5, member announcements and requests for information. Anything anybody wants to bring up?
Oh, just very. The V&T Rails Trails grant that we received from National Park Services, we're moving forward on that. Deb Reardon is putting together all the GIS. We're pulling together the stakeholders, and we plan a stakeholders meeting the May 7th week or the week of May 14th. Looking for a place now. Adams Hub's conference room is disappearing in April. They're going to turn it into offices. So I'm going to the sheriff's department now. But anyway, so far, going to the stakeholders, we're getting just really positive attitude. V&T Commission, Juan Guzman and I made a presentation there. They're sending 2 of their board members to this stakeholders meeting. Chris Bentley is sending Carlo Lurie to it. We're just really getting a lot of positive attitude towards developing this rail trail. So I'm beginning to develop some high hopes.
That's great. Now, that's a trail associated with the V&T, but it's not the railroad, right?
It's not the railroad. It's going to be, the proposal is that we build 12-foot wide, compacted trails, paved in town, non-paved outside of towns. And the hub will be the corner of Washington and Carson Street in downtown Carson City. The trail will go to Virginia City, to downtown Reno, and to downtown Minden. So it'd be about 50 miles of trail if we get it done.
That's exciting. Thank you. Any other items for member announcements or requests for information?
I was just going to mention that Margie had said that she's not going to be at the next meeting in April, and I won't either, so just you might want to make sure that you're going to have a quorum.
I won't either.
So does that mean we don't have a quorum for April?
We have 4 right now.
May I say that I'm not leaving until the 16th, so I would like to review the items and send Chairman my input.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
And I also will be glad to forward my ideas and thoughts.
Great.
Because so everything's on the internet now, it makes it pretty easy. Thank you.
Okay, any other member comments? Any final public comments? Okay, future agenda items, we've identified a number. Are there any others we'd like to make a note of here? All right. Seeing none? Any public inputs on that one? Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
move we adjourn.
Okay. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.